This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
All right, go time for another day on Winnipeg Sports Talk. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the program. Andrew Hustler Paterson along with Michael Remis. And we got a lot to get to. Huge night last night and tonight in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Do or die for the Manitoba Moose tonight at Canada Life Center, taking on the Milwaukee Admirals. And as promised yesterday, with rookie camp scheduled to begin around the league, a check-in with Justin Dunk at 3 Down Nation on what the heck is going on between the Canadian Football League, the CFLPA, and some of the other big stories heading into CFL training camps, assuming that they happen and we get a labor deal happening. Going to be a great show. Of course, the huge topic all week long on this show has been the Winnipeg Jets coaching search. Murat is going to join us coming up a little bit later on. As I mentioned, we'll have Justin Dunk, and then we will head down to Canada Life Center and set up tonight's elimination game for the Manitoba Moose, facing a 2-0 deficit against the Milwaukee Admirals, with the voice of the Moose normally on CJOB, but tonight you'll see him on TSN3 calling the Moose and Admirals. Of course, we're talking about our good friend Daniel Fink. But lots to get into right off the bat from last night's action in the National Hockey League. First up, a big thanks to the folks that make this show happen each and every day: Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Vita Health, Breezy Bend, Not Auto Corp, Royal Sports, Manitoba Battery, Culligan Water, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Assiniboia Downs, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course our betting partners over at Coolbet Canada. Let's get right into it. Michael Remis joins me now, and Remo, holy smokes, do we have a lot of hockey. Ice dropped a 3-2 decision last night. There will be a Game 5 coming up this weekend, and we'll look forward to catching up with one of the members of the Winnipeg Ice tomorrow when they get back in the early hours after traveling overnight. And of course, tonight, it's all about the Manitoba Moose. Do or die situation. Should be a great atmosphere down at Canada Life Center, and hopefully the Moose can extend their season, get it to the weekend, and see what happens after getting one in the win column.
Yeah, I'm in a great mood. There were some awesome games last night. Leafs win, Oilers loss. Loved it. But as far as the Manitoba teams go, we're all hyped about the Moose tonight. Game 3, they seem to be pretty confident. Winnipeg Ice, it's amazing to me that they can just like blow a team out like 7-0 and then lose the next game by a goal. It's so odd. We know that they're one of the top teams in the WHL. That's just hockey. I mean, same thing in the NHL and the Leafs Tampa series. You know, one team wins 5-0, and the next game the other team wins 5-0. That's just how it goes sometimes. But it's confusing. I guess that's why they play the games. But yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm really hyped. I'm really into this Oilers loss.
Yeah,
from yesterday.
Well, okay, we'll get to last night's action in the playoffs in a minute, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But quickly, as we mentioned, big game for the Moose tonight, and we will be talking with Daniel Fink a little bit later on. And yeah, I mean, as far as the Ice goes, 2 just comfortable blowout victories at home against Moose Jaw. But as you mentioned, a lot of pride in that room. There's a reason why they've moved on to the second round. And they put up a pretty good fight against the Ice in the regular season. So, hey, kudos to them for getting the win. I imagine we'll see a much more focused and determined Ice squad tonight in this game. And I would be surprised if we're not talking about the team coming back with an opportunity to close out their series. All that being said, I mean, we've seen a number of series so far, certainly in the National Hockey League, the Carolina-Boston series, where Carolina looked completely in control and then went to Boston, and, next thing you know, it was 2-2. So that's where it is tonight. And just quickly, speaking of series, And you mentioned, how things can go one way one night and one the other. I will say this, if I wasn't already going to the Moose game tonight and looking forward to it, I think I'd be making a trip out to Steinbach for Game 7 of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League Finals. This series between the Dauphin Kings, Reem, and the Steinbach Pistons has been wild. And you talk about, results happening one way and then going the other. Listen to the 6 games so far in this series. Game number 1 was in Steinbach. The Pistons won 5-1. Game number 2 in Steinbach, the Dauphin Kings came back and won 5-1. The series moved out. The series moved to Dauphin for game number 3. Steinbach won 5-4 in overtime. The next game, game 4, Dauphin won 5-2. 2-2 series going back to Steinbach. Steinbach wins 2-0. Series goes back for game 6 to Dauphin. Dauphin wins 2-0. This series right now has a goal differential of 1 goal in favor of Dauphin, who scored more goals than Steinbach, or I guess 2 more goals in their Game 3 loss. And it all comes down to 1 game for all the marbles. And if you've been following it all or seen pictures, both the crowds in Dauphin and in Steinbach, the atmosphere has been amazing, and we've talked about it. There's nothing like Game 7, but Game 7 for a championship is what it's all about, and that will be an incredible scene out in Steinbach tonight for those of you in the area, if you can get your hands on a ticket and get into see some young men playing, sometimes for the last time in their junior hockey career. I'm a big MJ guy. I've always loved the league, and listen, Game 7, do or die tonight for both teams. Man, what a great atmosphere that should be out in Southwest.
Yeah, shout out to Bad Mood Blake in chat. He says, sounds like it's worth a trip to Steinbach. Almost
nicely done, Blake.
That was too easy. Well done. And that's so a lot of we're focused on the Jets all week. We're on day 3 of Trot's Watch, if we can still call it that. But there is a lot of other, local hockey. You said MJ, Moose tonight, and Ice as well. They're playing Game 4 tonight before driving back overnight, and Game 5 here on Friday at the Ice Cave.
Yeah, so tomorrow on the program, we will have one of the members of the Ice, potentially Matthew Savoy or Connor Geeky. And, we should quickly, just before we get to the action on the ice last night, of course, we talked about it yesterday, before things went down 5:30 our time, Remo, they started pulling the ping pong balls. And this was of particular importance, I think, to Savoy and Geeky, because they're both, projected to be potentially top 10 picks, teammates of the Winnipeg Ice going the first round of the NHL draft. But the ping pong balls rolled the way of the Montreal Canadiens. Hey, they deserved it. They were the worst team in the league and had an absolutely miserable season after going to the Cup final the year before, which is still, frankly, hard to believe. But they're going to get the opportunity to presumably take Shane Wright, number 1 overall. They are hosting the draft. Fill in your conspiracy theories if you'd like.
Fix is in.
Your conspiracy theories if you'd like. But the other winners last night was the New Jersey Devils, really, that got a chance to move up into the 2nd spot. Arizona picks 3rd. The Seattle Kraken pick 4th. And listen, it was a 95% chance that the Winnipeg Jets would be picking in the 14th slot. And that's exactly where they're doing it. And Murat and the Athletic gang, immediately after the lottery, went in and did a mock draft. I love mock drafts. I'll be reading and doing them over and over again until the 7th of July and the draft. But I'll be looking forward to talking to Murat about the pick that he has selected for the Winnipeg Jets, as well as what he learned from his other counterparts around the league with the Athletic on what is to come when we gather in Montreal in July to hear the names come off the board.
Yeah, Montreal, number 1 draft is in Montreal. Seattle, they're not getting any, it doesn't get easy here for them like Vegas had it. They're pretty tough. 4, Arizona 3. A lot of talk about, was the Seth Jones trade worth it? And they traded, Boquist and the 6th pick and then signed Jones to this very long contract. I don't know if they needed to do that if you're going to be getting the 6th overall pick. Buffalo's got a number of picks as well this year. They're interesting. So we'll see. Yeah, in Columbus, they have 2 there in the top 12.
Who thought when Jack Eichel got traded from Buffalo to Vegas that pick that they were
16.
getting from the Vegas Golden Knights would be in the top half of the NHL draft. Not very many folks, I don't think. And just speaking of the Blue Jackets, you're right. They pick at 6 and they pick at 12. And I mean, again, take this for what it's worth. It's a mock draft. I mean, things can go very differently, and they probably will. But the Athletic, Aaron Portzline, who was making the selections for Columbus, took Savoy from the Winnipeg Ice at number 6, and then Geeky from the Winnipeg Ice at number 12, which would be pretty wild for those two guys to have such a great season together playing in the Western League and then both find themselves being called by the same team in the first round of the NHL draft. There will be a few teams, as you mentioned. I mean, Columbus is going to have a couple picks and Buffalo have a couple picks in the first half of the draft. So I guess there's some potential on that. But bottom line is for the Winnipeg Jet fans, we'll start focusing in on that number 14 selection for the hockey club, as well as everything else going around the club, potential player moves. And as you mentioned, the Trotz watch continues. I know people are impatient. People are going, why haven't the Jets signed Barry Trotz? Well, first of all, they got to figure out if he's willing to come here, work something out. And as Pierre LeBrun said, I think with everything that just happened this week, just a couple days ago, he's going to take at least a week to sort of figure out the landscape. And if you're Barry Trotz and you want to play, you don't want to really fully see what your options are out there, probably be wise to wait a couple of weeks to see what happens in the aftermath of this first round. I can tell you, Reem, that there was a time last night where it looked like there might be an opening in Toronto. We'll get to the Oilers game in a minute. There's some big comebacks last night. The Oilers, the Blues, and the Leafs. The Blues and the Leafs were able to finish the job and get the win. The Oilers weren't able to, but just a wild night of hockey. But I'll tell you what, that win by Toronto and Austin Matthews stepping up. Listen, I know there's a lot of people that can't stand the Leafs, can't stand the Leaf fans. That was a big time performance under maximum pressure last night. And this series seems destined for 7. Cannot wait to see what happens in Game 6. But we certainly know Tampa's record of bouncing back after a loss. And if you could tell me that we're going to get Game 7 between these two clubs on the weekend, sign me up for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was an awesome game, especially that third period where you had 4 goals, including Toronto, who were down 2-1, tying it with the Morgan Riley shot, and he was fired up after that. William Nylander, who was getting killed in the media, and even Sid Seixeiro tweeted earlier that he had seen enough from William Nylander.
Sid! What a God! Like, listen,
it got ratioed pretty good.
I don't want to kill a guy because I mean he's always sort of been paid to be opinionated to have these hot takes, but could you look like more of a dork, going at William Nylander last night in the middle of the game and then having him score 2 goals, including the winner? And listen, the comments on his tweets, I mean, the amount of people giving him a hard time about doing the traffic on the Don Valley Freeway first thing in the morning or a new muffin recipe on breakfast TV was pretty savage. But of course, a lot of sports people remember him from all those years on Tim and Sid. He's gone to the morning, but he still has terrible sports takes. And, that one's going to live around for a long time, especially if the Leafs get it done.
That was a pretty nice shot there, like going one way, shooting at top corner. But then Toronto, tied it up real quick right after Ryan McDonough. And I started, I'm not sure how, you see all these Canadian teams, and I'm kind of cheering for misery here with the Oilers, but the Leafs, they've been there so many times. They have a really good team in the regular season. I think the Oilers have a flawed team, just to compare them. And I liked seeing the Toronto fans just go so crazy. They haven't had a first-round win since, 2004? We know about 67. And you have this Hart Trophy, probably winner in Austin Matthews. And for him to score the goal on the Marner shot rebound, I don't know. I'm sure it was kind of intentional placement there.
Yeah, you think that? I'm with you. I thought that was completely intentional. Those guys have a pretty amazing connection between the two of each other and between each other. And he hit that off the pads. Vasilevsky did the only thing that he could do, get in front of it, right onto the stick of Matthews. And that was wild. Game 6 back in Tampa will be a huge test for the Leafs and the ability to slay the dragon. I have a feeling, though, this one's coming back to Toronto. And once again, all you haters in the chat room will be able to cheer against them. The Leaf Nation will get their hopes up, and it's going to go one of two ways. Either will be fun and exciting, I think, for most hockey fans. But the Oilers. My good friend Dustin Nielsen, I was following him and being in touch with him during the game. He said that the first period of the Oilers last night on home ice in Game 5 might have been the worst period that they had played in months. And that is that's just unacceptable. And Woodcroft, the new head coach, I think for the most part has pressed all the right buttons of this team. It didn't seem to go that way last night. They didn't seem to be ready to go to match what the Kings were bringing in, arguably, the game that always, in most cases, when you're tied 2-2, sort of decides who wins the series. I think, 83% or something like that? To their credit, they battled back, but, they were undisciplined. They took stupid penalties. Darnell Nurse has a hearing with NHL player safety, and I'd be surprised if he's allowed to play, and that's a huge loss for Edmonton in Game 6 if he's not allowed for a headbutt that he did last night in the game. But then, the cream rises to the crop. You have McDavid and Draisaitl doing what they do, getting the team back after being down 2 goals in the second half of the third period. And then basically over before it's done. Duncan Keith absolutely burned by Adrian Kempe with an absolute bull rush to the net. Mike Smith couldn't make the save. He lets in 5 goals. And yes, I know you got the Kings hat on tonight, and you were one of the few that thought the Kings might be able to win this series. They're 1 win away, and you can feel the tension in Alberta, 2 provinces over here.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot in the chat, and I was thinking this as well. What you saw and heard from the Oilers players after the game sounded pretty familiar to a lot of Jets fans. Horrible start in the first period, inconsistent play, a bottom 6 that doesn't contribute offensively. I know the goaltending.
Although Zach Cassian actually showed up and got one last night. I know he's sort of been around the lineup.
That start of the first period, the whole first period was absolutely terrible. They got totally outplayed, and then you have this flash of brilliance from McDavid and Draisaitl in the third period where it looked like there was no way they could lose that game. Their goals they were scoring were like beautiful rushes, passing plays, one-timers. Like, why can't they do this the whole game? And I think that's so puzzling. And then in overtime,
I thought they were going to win in regulation after they tied it up. The final 3 minutes of the game, was an onslaught from Edmonton, and Jonathan Quick stepped up and made the saves that they needed to. And that was one thing that Mike Smith, unfortunately, wasn't able to do last night once again. And now they're talking about maybe getting Koskinen in Game 6 after the first 5.
Yeah, I think this was they're not going to win with Mike Smith in goal. It's pretty clear. And, they signed him to a 2-year deal after last season, which we questioned at the time. We also questioned the acquisition of Duncan Keith and his $5.5 million contract. And you saw him getting walked by Adrian Kempe for the OT winner. The Oilers team, not very good. They're getting carried by their 2 stars. They tried to will them to win, but it just wasn't going to happen. And as far as who do you go, Koskinen or Smith, you're not going to win with Smith. I don't think Koskinen's great either, but maybe Koskinen could give you something good, and I just don't know if you're going to get that from Mike Smith.
They're going to need to score a bunch of goals if they want to win. Yeah. And the Staples Center, the Crypto.com arena. Crypto.com arena, as it's called now. It's hilarious.
Still called that. Hasn't crashed yet for a name change, just for the record.
By the way, I was reading last night, crypto has completely bottomed out right now, huh?
I'm not too up to date, but yeah, I think it's free falling.
Any crypto guys in the chat, give us the lowdown on what's going on. Maybe it's a buy low time.
I think it's buy the dip. That's what they say. buy the dip. But going back, we didn't even touch on the nurse play. It seemed I saw Frank Cervelli show. He thought he was going to get a game. Dusty thought a game for sure.
Oh,
just unnecessary
I don't think
play.
There's any question.
The guy doesn't have the puck in Dano. It's after the whistle. He goes down and launches his head upward into Dano's head. Accident. I try to think, well, maybe it was an accident. He didn't mean to. I'm like, well, did Mark Scheifele mean to knock Jake Evans out unconscious? No, he's trying to prevent a goal. So, you can't launch your head into another guy's head And I do think, yeah, that's probably worth a game, and we'll wait and see what happens. But that would be a pretty tough loss for a team that's pretty thin on defense as it is. Now I saw speculation on the postgame show. What? Maybe they put Chris Russell in. I'm like, oh, if you're reaching there.
It's Russell time. It's Russell time in Edmonton right now. And just quickly, I mean, on Keith, if you recall at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of criticism of Ken Holland for what they gave up to take Duncan Keith, and particularly that contract at $5.5 million at his age. And there were many people that thought that he lost a step. And he famously said, well, when we get on the ice, we'll see who's lost a step. I think it's safe to say, watching the winning goal last night, Duncan Keith has absolutely lost a step. And I don't know at what point where he knew that he was absolutely screwed. He sort of went around and extended the stick and tried to whack it out. But that was a big league play by Kempe, who I think smelled blood in the water when he saw him going in with that sort of speed on Duncan Keith. And the next thing you know, it was time to hit the dressing room.
Yeah, and that, his big salary is why they didn't go acquire a goalie, because they're up against the cap. So, you spend money in one area, it means you can't spend in another. And we all knew goaltending was an issue. We knew from the minute, this Koskinen contract was handed out as a Peter Chiarelli parting gift. Wasn't a good one. And then you give Mike Smith. They have Mike Smith for another year, so they still got to fix the goaltending.
Just quickly, signing him to a 2-year deal. Do you think there was anyone else in the National Hockey League that was throwing 2 years on the table to Mike Smith last summer? No effing way. The contracts that were signed by the last two general managers, this one with Holland and before with Chiarelli, are a couple of the most head-scratching deals we've seen in the National Hockey League. And then the fact that they didn't do anything to improve the position. And listen, Smith had been great coming down the stretch, which I think gave some people confidence. And to be honest, Koskinen under Woodcroft was really good as well. So all is not lost for the Oilers, but they're one game away from losing, and what a disappointment that would be after the way they, bounced back from the game 1 loss, scoring 14 goals in game 2 and game 3. But credit to that LA Kings team. And you said, Remo, people have been sleeping on them. Mm-hmm. Phil Deneau, Anze Kopitar. It's a pretty good 1-2 punch, especially when you're going against a team with the firepower of the Edmonton Oilers. And so far, it's been the difference, as well as the guys in net.
The McDavid Dreiss, I'm so fascinated by this series, because what do the Oilers do if they lose? They had the disappointment losing 4 straight overtime games. Their record in overtime in the Draisaitl McDavid era in the playoffs has not been good. We know they lost, again, 4 straight to the Jets. 4 straight games. How many of those were overtime? Was it 3 overtimes? Or was it all 4?
Yeah.
It was 3, right?
3.
3. So it's not been good record. Their post-game press conference, they seem extremely frustrated, almost pissy. I don't know if it was quite there yet, but the pressure's on. They're going on the road. I don't know what they're going to do. 3 years of Ken Holland this month. I don't think he's had a good run and put them in a chance to win, especially everyone has known their goaltending wasn't going to cut it, and his goaltending again getting the criticism yesterday.
Oh man, some funny comments in the chat right now. T-Will, Keith, we'll see who's lost a step. Also Keith. Oh, it's me apparently. Hey, shout out to Larry Eloy. Larry is out in Regina listening live in lunch between seeing customers. Say what's up to your customers. Tell them to subscribe to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Press that red button on the YouTube. And then a whole bunch more on it. I'm interested as to where many of you are at. A common theme we hear around this time is that people just want a Canadian team to win the cup. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, I'm on the other side of that. When the Jets came in 2011, I made a couple of hot takes that the Jets would be the first Canadian team to win the cup. And that's still alive right now. Unfortunately, I don't think any of us expected it would be 11 years in. And as someone that picked Tampa in the series, I don't know how this is happening. Maybe it's just the players that they have, but I've actually come around. I found myself cheering for the Leafs last night and the Oilers and the Flames. So we're living in a bit of a bizarro world right now. I want the Battle of Alberta to happen. I don't know whether it's going to happen. It certainly doesn't look like it if the Kings can finish the job. Calgary's, of course, got a big opportunity tonight. We'll get into the Calgary game as well as everything else going on tonight a little bit later on. But we are going to switch gears over the Canadian Football League because there's lots to discuss and lots to get done before we see the 3-down game. Just before we bring Justin Dunk in, a big thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace, Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialist, serving residential and commercial customers in Winnipeg since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood, they've got the right fence for you. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they have Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. 452-2700 to make an appointment for a free estimate. And you can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to the showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenniston. Time to look good for those events coming up this summer, gang, as well as into the fall. We're getting out of this pandemic. You probably haven't worn a suit for a while. You maybe need a new one just due to sizing. And, of course, some new styles. F Apparel's got you covered. Custom suits for men, leading Winnipeg's industry when it comes to that, for starting at just $400. They've also got over 250 new styles and patterns that have come in for summer, so it's a great time to go and see them. Not to mention, if you are planning a wedding for this summer, next summer, in the winter, talk to them about a great deal for your wedding party. 15% off when the wedding party buys their suits from F Apparel. Find out more from Andrew and the gang down at 190 Smith Street, or hit them up online at fapparel.com. Our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market continue to deliver great prices to Winnipeg's best selection of natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries. You've got 7 locations to make it to pop in and see, but if you can't make it to the store, visit their brand new fully shoppable website to buy online or schedule a delivery with Instacart. But you will want to pop into one of the 7 locations to check out some delicious lunch options like Vita Market salad, soup, sandwiches, and the especially tasty falafel salad, and great barbecue options as well with delicious lean bison steaks or chicken. Vita Health Fresh Market, 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And hey, I told you yesterday, Assiniboia Downs original opening day was the 23rd of May. It has now been pushed back to the 31st of May. And at that point, it's going to be time to horse around again. Live racing, 7:30 p.m., May 31st, with no restrictions, and the return of ASD's famous prime rib buffet. The season will again feature large wagering pools, setting up the chance for a big score. You can join us every Monday to Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. or watch and wager on Canada's largest legal horse racing wagering site, hpibet.com. All right, let's talk some football right now. We wanted to get to this yesterday, and there was so much going on hockey-wise, but with rookie camps getting going, Bombers signing an Aussie punter today, we want to get one of our favorite experts in to talk about it. And Justin Dunk from 3 Down Nation joins us now. JD, what's up? How are you, my friend?
I'm trying to keep up with it all, my man, just like you.
Well, there's seemingly a lot to keep up with. We had the draft last week, some interesting moves, some interesting trades in and around the draft, and we can maybe get to that. But I think everyone, and I don't know, for me, when it comes to this, sometimes no news is good news. Hopefully things are progressing behind the scenes. But for folks that haven't been paying attention, can you give us a little bit of an idea as to what has been going on between the CFL, the CFLPA, and these labor negotiations? Because I will say, from someone that hasn't been following it very closely, the proposal that you guys reported on last week on the 10-year deal with no change to the salary cap was, honestly, from someone that has no skin in the game other than wants to see the game being played, one of the more outrageous labor proposals we've seen in recent pro sports history. What's going on with the Canadian Football League?
Overall, there was a new proposal presented from the CFL this morning at an airport in Toronto, and that's the absolute latest. But you alluded to it, Hustler, that 10-year proposal with a flat salary cap, that means no increase to the salary cap that's at $5.35 million, and it's been there for a number of years now. The players were frustrated even more than you. So really, when it gets down to it, in any labor negotiations, NHL, CFL, whatever league it happens to be, we saw a pretty contentious one recently with Major League Baseball as well. It comes down to money, and the players want an increase in guaranteed money, which we've seen happen in the NFL consistently as that guaranteed money has risen. It's not going to be the same amount of money, obviously, in the CFL that the players get, but they want more guarantees in their contracts. And they also want the ability for more money to be put in the players' pockets in the form of the salary cap going up if the CFL brings in new revenues, like they've talked about with Genius Sports, and heaven forbid the global program actually brings in some revenue. And if they added any other new revenue streams to the equation, the players want to be a part of that.
Well, I mean, it seemed like an insulting offer to me. I mean, what was behind that? And is there more to it? I have talked to some people behind the scenes that speculated that maybe this is a plan to, in some ways, sort of split the union, play the Canadian players against the American players, maybe to the benefit of the league. Where are you at on that?
That to me is the real question mark of this proposal, because I feel like with that proposal, the CFL thought once again they could come in and strong arm the players. But in my mind, the players are in a much different position than they've ever been because of that canceled season in 2020. And to some people, it might sound weird to say, but the players figured their way through it, just like a lot of us did, right? There was a lot of changes and ups and downs through the pandemic, and hopefully for the most part, we're on the other side of it. But as humans, we had to find our way through it. And as players in the CFL, they had to go out and get other jobs and support their families in other means, except for the franchise quarterbacks that had big fat stacks of money in CFL terms in their bank accounts to get through it. So the players have been through that. They know that they can go get other jobs and support their families if they don't get a fair deal. So in my mind, you have all this talk in the offseason, Randy Ambrosie in the league saying we want a true partnership. And it seemed like there was some progress there with some of the initiatives that they had come together on, in particular, a partnership where the program was put in place for former players to get in and have a closer look at the business and perhaps be with some of the CFL teams to see how they operate. But when the actual offer was made of that 10-year flat cap, that essentially dissolved all of that. So yes, it's a starting offer. You're not going to come out with your best one, but also you don't want to insult the other person. If you're supposed to have a relationship in this regard, and yes, it is a business, but if you're supposed to have a long-term relationship, you don't want to insult them. And I think that's what happened with the offer. So I think it was a miscalculation on the CFL's part, which honestly, they rarely do in these negotiations.
Is that on the commissioner? I'd imagine there's a lot of people. I know Wade Miller's involved in it. I mean, this is, they don't just do this. It's well planned out before. What was behind it? And maybe just speak to that. I mean, speculation on some people that this is because, I mean, the Canadian ratio was also going to be affected. And that's a huge issue for Canadian players as well as longtime backers of this league that want the Canadian content to remain.
Ambrosie's just sort of the front-facing person that I feel like everybody wants to sling mud at, in particular for this example of the proposal. I mean, he'll have to be on board with it, and certainly the rest of the other members of the Board of Governors will as well. But you mentioned it, Wade Miller, the president of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the CEO of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Scott Mitchell, have been the lead negotiators. So they're presenting the league side of this to the players. So everybody can't just stand there and say, well, this is all Ambrosie's fault and this is how he feels about the players, because in reality, he's talking to his bosses and it's probably got to go along with what they want overall, because ultimately the owners are the ones that are deciding whether he continues to be commissioner of the CFL or not.
Well, I'll say this about Wade Miller. I mean, he's been incredibly successful. He's completely turned around this organization, has done an amazing job. But if you know people that have dealt with him, he is he drives a hard bargain. And, maybe this was part of it. Well, what have you heard from players, especially veteran players in this league that, have understood, have been through some of this before? Where are they at right now? Because I imagine there's not a single person involved on either side that want to miss any time at all. But at a certain point, you do have to take a stand when offers are on the table that are so far removed from what you think is fair and right.
And that's the key to me, especially if you're a veteran player. You're not in a rush to get to training camp. Like, you're going to have your spot, right? So this has been my point for a number of CBA negotiations now, but in particular this one, because the players have gotten through that year without a CFL season. And you need to show that you mean business and you're willing to miss days of training camp, because the players don't get paid for training camp. They get game checks. And if you're a veteran player and the executive is made up of either veteran players or retired players, going to training camp, to be quite honest, isn't going to mean all that much. Yes, you need reps to get ready for the season, but we see it with the approach to the preseason games, right? There's not a lot of reps for the veteran guys. They get a little taste of it, get out of there, get ready for the regular season. So I think the players need to make a stand if indeed they feel like the offer is not fair, and do not show up for training camp when they're all supposed to open on Sunday. The deadline for the CBA, it expires May 14th, which is Saturday at midnight. And if the players don't like the latest proposal that was given to them this morning on Wednesday, then they need to make a stand, miss some days of training camp to get a better deal.
How difficult is that in the Canadian Football League? Because I think we've known that there are, when you look at, the players' unions amongst pro sports, the nature of the money involved in the Canadian Football League, football in general, with the shorter careers, guys needing to make what they can make right now because they know that opportunity might not be there. Never mind next year, next month. From a player from the CFLPA, how challenging is this right now?
It's difficult in a sense because you want to have your membership working, but also you want to have a fair deal. So you don't want to see them strike, and you don't want to have them quote on the picket lines or not showing up to training camp, because some people feel like that's a bad look. But ultimately, the worst look is taking a deal that you don't feel like is fair. So overall, that's the balance that the union and its executive have to deal with. And Adam Bighill, a veteran linebacker, the rating MODP of the league, of course, with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, is on that executive and giving his perspective into all of these negotiations, which have been led from the players' side by Solomon Elimimian, who was his former teammate in BC and a guy that had a long career in the league. So they understand that, yes, careers are short and players want to make money, but you don't want to leave money on the table in this situation. That's why I think it could be prudent. If you don't feel like the deal is fair, miss some training camp. Really put the pressure on the CFL for once.
Justin, let's talk about the Canadian ratio, because that was, as we mentioned, one of the things that, to eliminate it or change it. Fill us in on what the original proposal was, what that would do to Canadian players, and what, if it was accepted, what you think it would do to the CFL, and where you think things end up when it comes to Canadians in the league and the ratio that's been part of this league for so long.
Based on the memo that the CFLPA sent out to its membership that we procured at 3 Down Nation, the CFL wanted to completely eliminate the Canadian ratio. That means the amount of Canadian starters that you have on your game day roster. You're supposed to have 7. So overall, that was the league's at least starting proposal. Now, for a little while, the league has talked about this in past CBA negotiations. So if that indeed was the case, you wouldn't have to start 7 Canadians. And the league also wanted to trim the amount of Canadians overall in the game day roster, which I believe was in and around the 2021 mark last season. So you would trim back that number, and it would drastically change what we know as the Canadian Football League, because so many of the stars in this league, Andrew Harris is a perfect example of one of them. And you can go on down the list that are guys from their local communities that either star there or elsewhere that people draw attachment to. That has a trickle effect on down the system. Youth sports, Canadians at the minor football league level, high school football, and I believe also this explosion that we're seeing in the NCAA has to do with seeing these Canadian guys star in the CFL.
Well, what exactly is behind it? Does it matter? I mean, we see it every year in free agency. I mean, Canadian offensive linemen and high quality Canadian starters, are paid a premium. Is this just a matter of, not eliminating Canadians from the CFL, but not having them have that somewhat of a negotiating hammer because of how important they are with the present status of the league, with the ratio and the Canadian starters mandated as they are?
That's part of it. The league's looking at it from a supply and demand perspective, right? You have thousands, literally, of able American football players that could come up here and would play football for dirt cheap, so to speak. Whereas There's only 27 U Sports programs that play football, and the amount of Canadians that come out of there, plus the Canadian Junior Football League, and of course, Simon Fraser University is also in Canada, is much, much lower than the amount of quality Americans that you can get from the US. So the CFL is thinking, well, we can get cheaper talent up here and drive down our costs. Now, from the player's perspective, in terms of the union, there's been some talk about how Canadians in certain positions get paid more, and it might not be necessarily fair to the Americans at those similar positions who are just as productive, if not higher quality players that end up getting paid less due to that supply and demand because there's so many American players. Now, I understand that, but back a few years ago, the average salary disparity actually had Americans, when you take away the starting quarterback salaries, and they are all American, they were at the time. Nathan Rourke looks like he's going to start for the BC Lions this year, however, but it's at a bargain rate, $80,000. But the average salary for an American non-quarterback in the CFL was $93,000. The average salary for a Canadian in the CFL was $80,000. So in actuality, the Americans make more on average, but where you see the discrepancy is certainly at the higher end of those pay scales.
Justin Dunk, the 3 Down Nation, is with us, getting ready for CFL training camps, hopefully, and of course the season just around the corner. On a positive note, when for folks that enjoy and believe in having Canadians starting in the league, we had a first-round Canadian quarterback go in the draft last week, and the Elks have just signed Canadian quarterback Trey Ford. Of course, his brother was drafted 13th by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I want to ask you about the draft, but in particular, I mean, as a former QB yourself, how significant is it to see a Canadian quarterback go that high in the draft? And what are the prospects of seeing? Listen, at the same time, we're going to see Canadians play quarterback in BC right now. At least that's how it's set up to go going in with Nathan Rourke, the projected starter. Are things changing when it comes to Canadian quarterbacks and how they're being produced and how they're being at least considered for playing time in the CFL?
Times are certainly a changing, and I'm obviously biased as a former University of Guelph quarterback myself, but Trey Ford is a generational athlete. I don't care where he's from, what it says on his birth certificate. We're talking about a guy that runs in the 4.4s in the 40, jumps well into the 30s in his vertical jump. Now, you might not be doing much jumping as a quarterback, but it just shows you his athletic ability. He had at least 24 teams, if not more, reach out to Warriors head coach Chris Bertoia, NFL teams is to do background research on Ford leading into the NFL draft because of how well Ford performed at the University at Buffalo Pro Day. There were a number of scouts on both sides of the border that said Ford was the best player on the field that day at a pro day held on a campus of an NCAA Division I program. So that shows you the ability of Ford. Now, the kicker with him in terms of why he didn't get more of a legitimate NFL shot yet was because scouts found it tricky to evaluate the film of a Canadian quarterback playing U Sports football and the caliber around him. So the Elks make him the first Canadian quarterback selected in the first round of the CFL draft since 1980. It's been over 40 years since a quarterback was taken in the first round, and he's actually elected not to go to New York Giants rookie minicamp, which is this coming weekend. This past weekend, he was at the Baltimore Ravens rookie minicamp, getting in front of their coaches and scouts because he wanted to get to Edmonton, learn the playbook. And I'm sure Chris Jones said, hey, come here, don't get behind, and we'll find a way to get you on the field. And if you earn more of a role, we'll give it to you, because we know Chris Jones loves his ultra athletic football players.
How good's his brother? Because his brother went off the board at 13 for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, playing on the other side of the field.
Tyrell's really good too, a guy that has that 4.4 type range speed. They're twin brothers, so they look similar. They play similar in terms of when they're at their positions, very smooth and both ultra fast and ultra athletic. Tyrell Ford was a guy, though, at the University of Waterloo that didn't see receivers that were at his caliber in terms of the pure athleticism. So in times you can talk to CFL scouts and they'll say, well, it looked like Tyrell Ford was a little bit bored out there and he's trying to bait quarterbacks into throws because nobody's really throwing at him. But he has the ability to be a starter, no doubt, in the CFL at corner, potentially even at safety. He could be a versatile piece in that secondary for the Blue Bombers.
JD, what were your other takeaways from the draft? We saw a couple of interesting trades, including a couple involving Edmonton, Winnipeg involved in one. I mean, what were your takeaways from last Tuesday?
Yeah, really the big moves that stuck out to me were the Montreal Alouettes having conviction and going up to number one and selecting Syracuse University linebacker Tyrell Richards first overall, when a lot of people felt like that was a guy that could fit the way Chris Jones likes to play defensive football, because Richards lined up at defensive line, linebacker, and defensive back at the CFL Combine, the only player ever to do so. So a lot of people felt like Jones was going to keep that pick, but really he wanted to get Trey Ford. So the Owls take him number one. And then what I thought was a really prudent move by the Tiger Cats, they didn't end up having a first round pick, but as part of that deal to trade it away, they get Kyle Saxlid, who's definitely a guy that can play right tackle for you and potentially left tackle for the Ticats, which is a spot that they needed to fill. And also they get Grant McDonald, who's an up-and-coming Canadian linebacker, two guys that have the pro experience under their belt. Instead of a draft that was a little bit weaker, the Ticats decide not to pick in the first round and get two, I won't say proven yet, but two guys who could become high-quality CFL players.
You know, we were just talking about Trey Ford, and to me, maybe the most interesting thing in the entire league right now is Chris Jones, how he's going to remake that Elks roster, and especially the quarterback position. People might not remember, but Nick Arbuckle got traded there and got some guaranteed money for this year. They've since drafted a first-round quarterback. They've signed former OSU star, Ohio State star Cardale Jones. What's Chris Jones up to? And in particular, how do you think things shake out at the quarterback position through camp heading into the regular season?
The Arbuckle guaranteed money is a bit of a mirage, let's say, because that was a deal in the drawer from the previous general manager, Brock Sunderland, when he traded for Arbuckle last season. So Jones had been trying to see if he could get anything for Arbuckle before JT Barrett suffered an offseason injury. The other former Ohio State University star that the Elks had under contract, but he's been put on the retired list due to the injury. So now it seems like they're probably going to have to go back to that route with Arbuckle potentially being the starter. But I think this is wide open here. You have Cardale Jones coming in. You have Taylor Cornelius, who some feel like Jones could like, big arm, a little more athletic than maybe given credit for, but not necessarily a Jones guy in terms of the athleticism that he wants at the position. And then you talked about it, Trey Ford comes in there, and I'm sure Jones said to Ford, in terms of him deciding not to go to New York Giants rookie minicamp, come in, learn this playbook as quickly as you can, and if you play well, there could be more of an opportunity to get you on the field here, get you some legitimate film that the NFL teams can look at. And we got to remember the option window is back in contract, so even though Ford has signed a 3-year deal with the Elks, if he's in the CFL, it'll be with Edmonton. But at the end of every year, he'll have that opportunity to be looked at for NFL teams. So I'm sure that factored into this decision. And to me, it's a quarterback spot that is wide open.
Yeah, I mean, that entire training camp, I'm sure, will be one of the most interested in the entire league. When we look at the landscape of the Western Division, I think most would agree that the Bombers are the team to beat in the Canadian Football League as defending champs and bringing back most of those guys. How do you see things, in your opinion, going into the season right now? And granted, lots can change. Who are the biggest challengers in the West right now to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, do you think?
Ooh, to me, it's got to either be Saskatchewan and Calgary. And some people might go, really? You think the Stamps can contend? Well, if Bo Levi Mitchell is healthy and that arm is feeling good, then we know the Stamps are going to be in contention. Look at last year, he had a broken leg. Yes, he led the league in interceptions, but still kicked and dragged and got the Stampeders into the playoffs. And yes, Jake Mayer helped. So that's a part of that. So I think it's Saskatchewan and Calgary that are at the top. And you know Chris Jones is going to have his team ready to play. There's so many new pieces there, though. It's hard to figure out. I want to say that I think the BC Lions are going to be really good because they're looking like they're going to go with Nathan Rourke as a starting quarterback there, a Canadian, and then Michael O'Connor backing him up. And they've certainly got the firepower on offense with Lucky Whitehead and Brian Burnham. That defense needs to play much better, but even more importantly, they have to protect whoever's throwing the rock, and it looks like it's going to be Rourke. That offensive line has to be better if the Lions want to contend. So right now, the top contenders for the Bombers got to be the Rough Riders and the Stamps.
Talking CFL heading into training camp with Justin Dunk of 3 Down Nation. Make sure to give Justin a follow on Twitter and check out all their great work along with our pal John Hodge over at 3 Down. We are going to get back to hockey, but one more for you. Dustin Nielsen and I were doing our Tuesday edition of the Lock Shop yesterday, and we finished talking of some hockey and NBA, and then we're looking at the odds, the win totals for the league. And the East was fascinating, JD. You had all 4 teams with win totals over unders either 9.5 or 8.5, which tells me that this is maybe the most wide open division we've seen in years, certainly from the perspective of the books. How do you see the East shaping up on paper, at least going into the season?
It's going to be certainly competitive, and that's a big difference, especially for the Red Blacks, who were at, I believe, 3.5 last year. And I remember asking,
8.5 now.
Yeah, a 5-win difference. I remember asking former GM Elsar Desjardins, should we be betting on, what should we be betting on? And he said, well, if you want to lose your money, bet on the under. And it actually came in on the under. So we'll see what happens this season for the Red Blacks. But I think it's a great indication of how at least the odds makers feel about the East Division. It could go a number of ways. I still think Dane Evans needs to prove that he can be the guy because he's always had Jeremiah Masoli with him. We know Masoli can be the dude. Now he's in Ottawa with an entirely new team around him and a creative offensive mind in Paul Lapalisse. So if they can come together quickly, the Red Blacks are certainly intriguing. In Montreal, you got Vernon Adams Jr. at quarterback there. They bring back Trevor Harris, and Danny Machocha feels like they have the best quarterback situation in the league. And it would honestly be hard to argue, but I still think there's some other question marks there for the Red Blacks, especially on defense, namely with their pass rush. You need to get after the quarterback much better. And Toronto was sort of this upstart team last year, but you look at the pieces they added, and of course with Andrew Harris, you got to think that they're potentially going to even be more dangerous on offense. So it looks like a wide open East right now.
Well, JD, we're looking forward to hopefully getting this labor stuff done, getting the players on the field, getting some preseason action in a couple weeks, and then getting ready to go and see if the Bombers can go back to back to back. That's certainly what people around here are thinking about right now. Thanks so much. Fill people in on what you and John Hodge have heading into training camps over at 3 Down.
Appreciate you, Hustler, man. I'd rather be talking about footballs than paperwork. Okay, so we're going to be covering the CBA negotiations. Hopefully that gets tidied up. And then all of the latest news you'll be able to catch at 3downnation.com. We're going to have an early look at some of the top prospects to keep an eye on for next year's draft. The East-West Bowl, the U Sports East-West Bowl, that is, was just played. And then also we're going to look at what are some of the biggest position battles on every team across the league and what are some of the biggest questions. And I'm sure Bo Levi Mitchell's arm will be one of them.
Great stuff, John. Justin, and say hi to John, and we'll look forward to doing this hopefully on the reg throughout the season. Cannot wait to get back to IG Field and get back watching these games and not talking, as we mentioned, about labor negotiations, but talking about the stars of the Canadian Football League. Have a great one. Appreciate you.
You too, Hustler. Well said, man.
Good stuff. There it is at JDunk12 on Twitter. That's Justin Dunk. And make sure to follow on Twitter, 3 Down Nation. They do a great job of posting all of their stories. And if you're a CFL fan, that is a go-to spot on the daily. All right, we're going to get back to some hockey. Talk to Murat of the Athletic coming up in just a second. I'm doing more hydration. Great moves. Culligan's got us covered. I know Remis just had a delivery coming over a couple days ago. And who wouldn't? Because Culligan Water has celebrating over 65 years as being the go-to people for water services in Winnipeg and Manitoba. Softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services available, as well as commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Visit them over at 1200 Sargent Avenue. You can hit them up at 694-5180 or find out more on what they can do for the home, the cottage, the office at culliganwater.com. Manitoba Battery continues to save Manitobans time and money with the best prices on batteries of all shapes and sizes down on Logan Avenue. Save the trip to Costco, save the gas, talk to the experts at Manitoba Battery and get the best prices in town while shopping local. Not to mention, they'll buy your old battery back from you. 1026 Logan Avenue with extended spring hours now open till 8 p.m. each and every day. And what your best bet might to do is give them a call at 783-8787. They'll have everything ready for you to pick up quick and easy down at Manitoba Battery. And you can also check them out at manitobabattery.com. sportstalkdaily.com. Now, we're talking football, we're talking hockey, we're going to be talking a lot of soccer. I took in the Valor FC home opener on the weekend, had a great time there. And of course, you could just feel the excitement amongst soccer fans about Canada being back in the World Cup. And the new Canada World Cup merch is coming in now at Royal Sports. Big shipment already in this week. Alphonso Davies jerseys, Team Canada jerseys, and of course, the We Can 22 World Cup shirt now available over at Royal Sports. And while you're there, check out their massive expanded soccer section. Not to mention soccer, baseball, expanded fitness gear, and of course, a great selection of bikes to get out and dominate our all too short spring and summer here in Manitoba. Royal Sports is at 750 Pembina Highway, and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for their latest merchandise drops and sales. Probably a big tent sale coming up soon as well. All right, let's talk some puck. Murat of The Athletic is back with us, and we've got a lot to discuss with Murat. How are you, my friend? What's going on?
I'm doing well. I missed you. I'm ready to be back, and everything has happened since I was here last.
Well, no kidding. Let's start off with the coach. I mean, we're kind of jokingly calling it Trotz Watch on the program. First off, Monday morning, you hear the news. How surprised were you that Barry Trotz was all of a sudden a free agent? And I know you did an extensive piece in The Athletic on it. Your thoughts on what a great fit he would be if the Winnipeg Jets were able to convince one of the NHL's most successful coaches to come back to his home province of Manitoba?
You know what? I was surprised. I was genuinely surprised, Cuz, that Barry Trotz was fired by the Islanders. I thought that his league-wide renown, the fact that he'd taken them to back-to-back Eastern Conference finals, the way that he'd won that Stanley Cup with Alex Ovechkin famously buying into the team game, I mean, everything was going right for this man until this season. I thought that he would be a no-brainer to rehire. Now, of course, his assistant, Lane Lambert, pardon me, I've got some prospects in my mind from the NHL Draft Lottery. But Lane Lambert is thought of as an extremely up-and-coming, highly touted next-generation coach, and maybe that's a direction the Islanders go. All to say, shocked, surprised, my phone blew up before I saw it on a news source. And the reason I think so many people are excited is because what Barry Trotz is renowned for is exactly what Winnipeg appears to need. Defensive structure, sticks in lanes, collapsing down low, all five men committed, a sense of accountability, buy-in, and a level of standards, I think, defensively and two-way that a lot of people believe, and myself included, that Winnipeg needs to get to. Barry Trotz has demonstrated an ability to get that out of teams. Maybe not for 7 or 12 years at a time in recent stints, but for 3 or 4 years, it seems like he can get an awful lot out of what looked to be an average team in New York. So, I mean, I'm excited. I have to think that he's the top coach on the market.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And, there's a number of, intriguing possibilities on what Trotz will do. And I mean, we've spoken and we'll kind of focus more in on the hockey side, but as I've been talking about the last couple, days here on the show, there's some real significant challenges for the organization overall outside of the actual hockey product. Now, at the end of the day, it's all tied back to wins and losses and how the team performs. But for a group, a management team that, not all, but I mean, has lost some of the confidence of a part of the fan base. And certainly that was loud and clear in your fan poll at The Athletic. There simply is not a more impactful guy you could get the name on the dotted line to, I think, reinvigorate a fan base and introduce some confidence that the team is going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a matter of his stature and standards that Barry Trotz would bring. I mean, after a disappointing season, all the hype, but the playoff miss, all of that consternation around, well, what did Mark Scheifele say in his exit interview? What did Pierre-Luc Dubois say? Are there going to be major transformations, or can these guys be made, major transformations roster-wise, I should say, or can these guys be made to buy in and take one more really solid run, knowing that you have somebody who is of the best coaches in the National Hockey League for the last however many years. I mean, that's a level of, you can sell optimism with that. You can sell optimism not just to the fan base, but to the players who are a little bit uncertain, to some players who may have privately expressed that they want out. Well, hey, wait a second. There's all of a sudden another reason to get excited and believe that they can get to a level. And believe me, Huss, we talk about that fan survey. We talk about the fan reaction to these things. There's a sense, and I certainly contributed to it by presenting Barry Trotz as an elite of a coach as I believe him to be. But there's a sense in the fan base that you do this one thing, this last year's forgotten and forgiven. And that might be a little bit extreme. I mean, we should have some grace for the possibility he might not want to sign here. But there's this sense that this one move could fix everything, whether that's true or not.
Well, you're exactly right. And I'll say that there's no one that would fix more things on the list signing than Barry Trotz. And the reason why I bring up the business side of things when it comes to regaining the confidence of fans, when it comes to some season tickets, maybe holding on to a few more of them, maintaining corporate sponsorship. That's a huge part of running a business, which is what the National Hockey League is. And it's extremely challenging doing it in the smallest market, in the smallest building. And the erosion of what's happened over the last couple of years, I think, has been incredibly concerning. Now, I also think that the Winnipeg Jets didn't have a Barry Trotz-like figure in the coaching budget, if you will. But I will make the argument that based on everything that we've said, that it would be money well spent and it would be paid back quickly, I would think, in maintaining a number of the customer base, reinvigorating the excitement, and hopefully moving past. And to your point about everything that happened last week, last season, from a hockey standpoint, this is a guy that has built teams, that has earned buy-in and earned confidence and, earned the mantle of one of the top coaches in all of hockey. And many people will put him at the top of the list right now. So, I mean, when we're talking about checking the boxes of what this Winnipeg Jet team needs, and there's a lot coming out of this season, Barry Trotz certainly at the top of the list. Let me ask you this. If they were able to get it done, and again, it's a big if, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but if he did, I talked about this yesterday, and I mean, I've been kind of clear. I think that there's some big changes that need to happen, particularly in the core. And I think my perspective, and I think many people, was that Mark Scheifele was at the top of that list, and I think that he would have put himself at the top of that list considering what we heard from him. If Barry Trotz is signed here, do you think that changes the Scheifele situation here, in that you've got a guy that has done exactly as you mentioned with a player like Alex Ovechkin that has got him to buy in? Or is the Scheifele situation at a spot and where his contract is with 2 years left, that regardless of what happens with the coaching staff, a significant change to the core needs to be made? And, because of many reasons that we've talked about a number of times over the last little while, Scheifele, regardless of, frankly, what he said at the end, which I think would push me closer to that direction, would be at the top of that list.
You know what? I think that he's the number one figure with Winnipeg right now, Mark Scheifele. And I've talked to some people, Huss, who would know Mark Scheifele better than I do and who actually can say that they know him or have been around the team. And the sense that I get is there's no malice in it. There's no villain in this story. But what he said to media probably reflects an honest assessment of how he's feeling and what he's thinking. And when I hear that and I think about this, I need to see what the team is going to do before I think about my future talk. I think that maybe, and this is me speaking now, I think that it reflects a level of self-awareness or maturity that Mark Scheifele has yet to necessarily get to. The dream is the Steve Yzerman moment, the mythological moment where the superstar buys into the team game, puts the team above himself, and all of a sudden the team goes further as a result. If you're the Winnipeg Jets and you believe in Mark Scheifele and you think he can get there, well, then Barry Trotz is the closest thing you have to somebody who can walk into that room and ask for it or build up that relationship. You're not throwing a rookie coach into the Winnipeg Jets locker room or taking somebody from Europe or a junior level league or what have you who hasn't spent a lot of time in the NHL. And that person's not going to walk into that room and be able to do the things respect-wise that a Barry Trotz or somebody of that ilk will be able to do. And that's what I think is really valuable here. It's possible Mark Scheifele needs a change of scenery. I still believe that's a real possibility. It's possible that it takes two, and that even if Barry Trotz comes in and does his best, there's a level of learning and growth that is not there. And this feels so, airy to say about Mark Scheifele. Well, I don't know on an intimate personal level, but that's my perception from having been around the team. But if you're the Winnipeg Jets, Barry Trotz is your best bet. And unless you're absolutely out on the player of Mark Scheifele, I think that, like you say, it's worth the return financially. It's worth the return because the Winnipeg Jets have invested so much into trying to get this 1-2 center pop, and to not actually get a proper look at what it looks like would be devastating, I bet, to management and ownership.
No, there's no doubt about it. If it can help you get Dubois signed long term, the bottom line is on the Line trade. If Dubois does not sign an extension, buying up UFA years, regardless of what happens in the next couple seasons, it'll be looked at as a big mistake by the organization. So I think that, aside from Scheifele, that is an absolute key. And I guess the other thing, and Scheifele would be at the top of the list when it comes to potential pieces moving around with considerable value coming back. I think that we have to acknowledge that Barry Trotz, with the stroke that he has and the options that he's going to have on the open market, is going to want to get paid for sure. And that'll go without saying with wherever he goes. But I think there's also going to be an element of control over the players that he's playing. And maybe that was part of what happened with Lou Lamoriello at the end. Maybe there was some friction as to, deciding who was in the lineup or not. But I do wonder about the nature of control, working with Kevin Cheveldayoff, Mark Chipman, and the organization as to how impactful he would be on some of those player moves. And I mean, it just makes it that much more fascinating because he's a guy that will want a particular type of player to come in and do the job. And we can maybe get into, if the Jets did hire Trotz, who would be the winners and who would maybe be the losers. But I'll say this, if they did get him signed relatively quickly with some time before the draft, I think Barry Trotz all of a sudden becomes a very influential figure in potential moves as well, as to what he sees in this roster, what is important to keep, and maybe some other players that could come in on his watch and flourish for the Winnipeg Jets to get back to being a playoff team and challenging for a cup next year.
Here's the thing. I believe that. I absolutely do. It strikes me as one of those great power comes with great responsibility moments, because one of the things that we've, been critical about the Winnipeg Jets at times is that it seems like Mark Chipman is fairly hands-on in terms of how the team operates. And I've heard that from people within the team. I've heard that from people without the team. I don't think that's some kind of myth. He's not as hands-on as any owner that has ever existed, but he certainly does have a role on how the team gets run. And, there's been some talk, what if there were a president of hockey operations in Winnipeg? How do you divide the balance of power? If you can arrange a situation where everybody is consulted just to the right degree, where Barry Trotz does have a substantial voice and Kevin Cheveldayoff has a voice, you might be able to let Mark Chipman take a bit of a step back, focus more on the business side of things, or what have you, maybe even board of governors stuff NHL wide, and really entrust the people with the hockey ops jobs to the hockey ops. Like, there's an opportunity there that, of course, also becomes a challenge if there's a bit of a too many cooks in the kitchen type of feel, or what those conflicts might look like, if any. And of course, part of the interview process would be to see if Cheveldayoff and Trotz and everybody sees eye to eye on those sorts of things, because there is such thing as a coach who has player types that excel under his watch. One of the first messages I got was from somebody who knows Trotz's resume very well, and who has seen him interact with players, who suggested, well, who's going to get ground into a pulp is probably Mark Scheifele and maybe Kyle Connor, even on the defensive side of things, which is interesting because, there's such tremendous offense there. Connor just hit 93 points. There's some give and take in that regard. And then the theory would be that a real strong 200-foot capable player who's still growing, like Pierre-Luc Dubois, might have the most to gain from a Barry Trotz type coaching regime if he can play that defensive zone style that Trotz really enjoys.
Well, it is a great point. And listen, I have no knowledge as to, what the issues for Mark Scheifele have been, but I think it's pretty clear that, he has 2 years left before signing probably one more significant deal in the National Hockey League. And if you're very concerned, I won't say most concerned, but if you're very concerned with maintaining your numbers and offensive production, because at the end of the day, that more often than not is what gets you an extra zero on your contract. I do wonder whether there would be some offense that would have to be sacrificed to fit into the Barry Trotz system at the benefit of the team, but maybe at the maybe the agent wouldn't be as happy because you might not have those same sort of numbers. That being said, I mean, I throw that out because that is something that people will think of, but I'll say this. If Mark Scheifele's worried about that next contract, we already know that the guy can score at a prolific level. If the next couple seasons he turned into a more reliable player that could be counted on by a guy like Barry Trotz, that could grow into, a player that is far more a 200-foot player, to be honest, you know that the guy can score. If you're talking about potential free agency, I actually do think that would really help his status. Although if you're just simply looking at goals and assists, maybe it doesn't.
I mean, that's an interesting point, right? The theory is that you look at $6.125 million, you look at what Kyle Connor has made, you look at what players around the league have made who aren't the offensive equal of Mark Scheifele, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, 2 years from now, he's going to want to get paid back for all of that underpayment on the Jets' part since then on the contract that the two parties signed. But I agree with you. There's this weird thing that happens in the NHL where sometimes star players on losing teams get completely undervalued, right? Like people talk about Connor McDavid sometimes as not a winner, or Austin Matthews is not a winner, or something to that effect, because their teams haven't gone deep in the playoffs. And, maybe there's some lessons that they still need to learn, but are they anything but the two best players on the planet? Absolutely not. And you look at a Connor McDavid type of career path where, yeah, his defensive impact was pretty poor for a lot of years, but this year and a little bit of last as well, all of a sudden there's a major turn in that, and there's a real sense of commitment. What happened to Connor McDavid's offense? It didn't go anywhere. He still got to be Connor McDavid because the puck was going in the right direction so much more frequently with him on the ice. And that's a special thing. If you can turn Mark Scheifele into a guy who isn't necessarily cheating, waiting for that moment for the puck to go the right direction, but can be counted on to be part of the force that turns the puck over and goes in the right direction in the defensive zone, transitioning into offense, well, he's going to get a solid amount of looks. He's still going to get his chances to shine. And league stigma-wise, like imagine this, Huss. Imagine the Jets miss the playoffs next year. Who's looking at Mark Scheifele as a winner capable of transforming a team's fortunes? You need Winnipeg to have team success to pair with his offensive excellence before somebody's going to look at what's going to be a 31-year-old unrestricted free agent and think that that's the bet to spend 8, 9, 10 million on.
No, it's a great point. And you sort of touched on this before, but I'll ask you, I mean, if, and it's a huge if the Jets were able to get Barry Trotz, as the head coach, you would expect, the expectations would be that the team would be better and the team would be better off for it. Who would be the winners and losers in the locker room right now as constructed? I mean, you mentioned Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'd throw Connor Hellebuyck maybe up at the top of the list right now. I think that you want to talk about putting a smile on a goaltender's face, let them know that Barry Trotz is going to be your coach. But when you look at the Jets, I mean, are there players that you think would benefit, or you think that others that might, maybe not fit in?
I mean, that's a great question. And I'll start by agreeing with you on Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, you look at the numbers that Braden Holtby had in Washington, you look at the New York Islanders winning the Jennings Trophy, I believe, and maybe Braden Holtby shared one of those as well in Washington. I mean, if you're looking for some demonstrable impact on the quality of shots a goaltender faces, look at a Barry Trotz team. And he is, one of a handful of coaches capable of that. There are 32 head coaches in the NHL, but maybe not, 32 top flight ones. And we know that he has had that impact, most of his seasons as a head coach in the National Hockey League. That's pretty impressive. But to try to suss out the rest of it, I think you're looking for those players that can commit to a two-way game, who can do the same thing over and over again. Because one of the tiring aspects of playing Barry Trotz style hockey, I think, is being asked to be in the right lane with the stick in the right position every single time without fail. And there's a level of consistency that gets asked for. So, without even thinking of the locker room dynamics, if you're going to look at players who are especially consistent, how about Blake Wheeler? Here's an interesting situation where simultaneously the Jets probably get more with less Wheeler minutes, from first line style to second or third line. But at the same time, his effort level and consistency tends to be up there. If there's let's put it this way. If there's buy-in on Wheeler's part and he's not an island and he's, integrated with the team and all those sorts of things, and he maintains that effort level that we've known forever, well, he might be able to get that olive branch from Barry Trotz to reestablish himself as, as a major leader, but from a little bit further back in the pecking order. There's something interesting to me about what that dynamic might be like. And then you're looking at how the young offensive stars look. And what does Nick Ehlers' game look like? Because he has a similar game in some ways to Matthew Barzal, in that there's a tremendous amount of transition play available to him. Those two tend to be in the top 5 in transition offense, up there with McDavid and otherwise. So it seems to me that Trotz can still get a lot out of that type of player. But then what gets asked for on the defensive end? How do those minutes get aligned? Do the Jets run under Trotz? Would they run a soft minutes offensive line like Barzal that gets pushed out in an attempt to make up for all the offense that the rest of the team didn't get? I think, man, that's a great question. And that's as far as I can take it right now. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we're all sort of, talking about this in real time right now. As it's been 48 hours or whatever since we found out that Barry Trotz was on the market. And I know some people in the chat are like, "How is he not signed already?" Well, listen, there's a lot of things that need to happen, and from Trotz's perspective, I mean, unless there's a real want to come back to Manitoba, to know that's a special opportunity considering everything else that he's done, maybe to be closer to some friends and family and realize how impactful he could be as somewhat of a hometown hero doing it. I mean, that's the best thing that the Jets would have going for them, but that's a big thing. That's totally up to Barry Trotz. Otherwise, like Pierre Lebrun, your colleague, reported earlier this week, I mean, he's going to take at least a week. I was glad that it wasn't like a month or two to see it, because I really do think that this is incredibly important. And the best case scenario for the Winnipeg Jets, if they were able to get something done, would be able to do it sooner as opposed to later, have plenty of time for Trotz to integrate himself into with Cheveldayoff and whatnot, look ahead to both the draft as well as the huge decisions that Cheveldayoff has from a general manager's perspective as to how to tweak this roster or potentially overhaul this roster for a new head coach going forward. Murat of The Athletic is with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to hit that red subscribe button if you're new. Great to have you all with us. And if you're listening on the podcast, do us a favor. Hit a little 5-star rating and a review. Always helps us spread the channel. Murat, last night, I'm interested as to what your night was like, because we all sort of paid attention to what was happening at the draft lottery, although I think we all sort of knew it was highly probable, like 95% probable the Jets were picking 14th, where they are picking right now. But, you had the half-hour draft special, and like an hour later, I'm reading a mock draft with you and your colleagues from The Athletic. Tell us about what last night was like and how this all came together before we talk about what the Winnipeg Jets situation was at 14.
Yeah, you know what? At The Athletic, when it comes to prospect coverage, Corey Pronman and Scott Wheeler, I mean, they're the drivers of that bus. They're the ones all year long doing the top 10, top 20, top 30, top 200 rankings on draft-eligible prospects. And so they wanted to take the lead and come up with a mock draft within, I don't know, it was a couple hours. Was it less than that, of the draft lottery results? So we're all in this sort of group chat as the lottery gets underway. We had a live blog at the site where we were talking about what odds each team had, what you would do if, what would the Jets do at number 4, for example? Could they take Matthew Savoie, for example, that kind of thing. And then as soon as the draft order was known, we took turns going through from 1 to 17. We included Nashville, the first round loser, at 17th overall. And we went pick by pick. What would the teams do if the board broke that way? And so what that meant was, the last couple of days were spent reading everything Pronman or Wheeler or any of those guys had read so that we'd be well versed. And, I like to think I took a pretty talented, flashy at times, but extremely fast and committed center in Frank Nazar.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Frank Nazar. We can get, maybe to some of the other players and some of the other discussions that went around. But this is a center from the National Development Program. The Jets have had a lot of success picking some, American players, either from colleges, the USHL, where Kyle Connor was before he went to Michigan. He's a center. Tell us more about this player that fell to the Jets in your first attempt at a mock.
Well, yeah, fell to the Jets is a great way to put it, because Nazar is thought of as a top 10 talent And if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan and you've watched the last couple of drafts, I mean, Cole Perfetti falling to the Jets at 10, Chaz Lucius falling to the Jets at 18. I think that Winnipeg got so fortunate, and we'll see how these players' careers go, of course. There's always surprises. But on draft day, they would have had to have gone home both times thinking, my goodness, we didn't have a lot of picks, but look what we were able to do in the first round. And with the Jets picking 14th, that's exactly the same type of vibe they'll hope for, that a top 10 talent like perhaps Nazar in this case, speedy, willing to go to the dangerous areas, a little bit undersized, and that's the concern about whether he'll be able to be a dominant center. But he seems to be, to read Pronman, to watch the video, willing to go to the toughest areas of the ice and generate offense from there. And he's done a lot of that for the US NDTP. So that's a player thought of as top 10 that could slide. But, as I'm waiting and watching that draft board unfold, I'm wondering, is 6'4" center Connor Geekie going to be available? Strathplayer's finest, or maybe Morgan Geekie. I don't know what the brother relationship is like in that family, right? But that is a player that could be available there. Dominion City's Denton Matachuk is another player that could be available there. There are some really, whether it's centers, whether it's defensemen, is available. There are options. And I think Winnipeg at 14, it's just going to be their job to clean up the best player available that's left as teams go this way or that, and some surprises unfold on draft day.
Well, we've seen it happen a number of times. I mean, many people thought the same thing happened with Nikolai Ehlers falling into their lap, and maybe the best example of that is Kyle Connor at 17. It's funny, we were just speaking about Matthew Barzal. He went the selection before, and Thomas Chabot went afterwards after the Bruins famously picked other guys at 13, 14, and 15. But when you are in the middle of the draft, I mean, it sort of is incumbent on your scouting staff to have a real good pulse on the talent level of those players, because at that point, especially with the timeline of the National Hockey League draft, you're not I guess in some ways you might be drafting for need if your pipeline is completely skewed one side or the other. But that doesn't really seem to be the case for the Winnipeg Jets right now.
No, I mean, you might argue that it's leaning defense heavy, but there aren't a ton of absolutely elite studs, coming at that defensive pipeline. There's some possible top 4 options. You'd like to see more from Ville Heinola, Dylan Samberg, Declan Chisholm. We'll see if he plays tonight for the Moose, but he's been one of the best players for Manitoba through the playoffs, a real impressive player. But you don't have that, that Matachuk or that type of top flight defenseman on the way. So you wouldn't feel begrudged if the Jets go that way. And at the same time, both Cole Perfetti and Chaz Lucius, as dynamic as they are, as brilliant as they are, neither one is absolutely guaranteed to be an NHL centerman, right? I mean, you see Perfetti break in on the wing. We'll see what becomes of Lucius as well. It seems as though, Pierre-Luc Dubois is that young center to be, and you're going to need a replacement or contingency plan for him. Even if he stays in Winnipeg for a long time, you need that next wave if there's any chance at all. I mean, that's an area you might prioritize. The Jets don't like taking goaltenders early. We haven't seen that. They seem to take one late, 5th, 6th, or 7th round almost every draft. That's how they got Connor Hellebuck. And if you're looking into the long term, I mean, maybe Arvid Holm is your guy. Maybe Eric Comrie can continue to take incredible steps forward, but that's a late round thing that you're looking for. Winnipeg needs help at every position. It's not because of poor drafting. It's because of not enough picks. And whatever they do, as long as they get somebody who covers the bet for that spot, I think is what they'll look for.
And just quickly on Matachuk for a minute, who's playing, I believe, with Moose Jaw right now, going up against going up against the Winnipeg Ice in the playoffs. If he was there and the Jets decided to select him, one of the more interesting sides to that would be, and regardless of the coach, I mean, whether it's Barry Trotz or not, they're packed right now with defensive prospects that seem ready to go. They also are packed with veteran defensemen that are on contract. And we know that that'll be, an issue for Cheveldayoff to try to open up a little bit of that. But a selection like Matachuk might potentially kick a decision down the road a little bit, and at the same time give them some capital to potentially move for a player that can help them right now. And of course, we're talking about that group. I think Dylan Samberg's going to be a player next year, but we've still waited for Ville Heinola to be a regular with the Winnipeg Jets. If they think that Matachuk can be that guy in a year or two, maybe that opens up the potential for trade opportunities, not only with some of the veteran players, but as well as a prospect or two.
Yeah, and I wrote to that effect in that mock draft as well, because I think that's realistic, Huss. I think that that's possible. Winnipeg as a franchise right now, they're not in tank mode. This isn't a team that's going to be looking at a whole bunch of top 5 picks in the next several years, nor are they obvious cup contenders. They missed the playoffs with a playoff-worthy roster this past year. So how do the Jets see themselves? How are they going to approach this next little while? And I think that they like their veteran roster. I think that they think if they can get the right coach in here and change the way some of these guys play, even if they have to make a move or two, that this is a playoff team. And if that's the case, then that logjam on defense, I don't think they're going to move 4 veterans to make room for Samberg and Heinola and make sure that Logan Stanley gets third pairing time and consider Declan Chisholm's future and all those sorts of things. It's at least possible that they go a different route and they ship from the future. And if you are able to pluck a Matachuk or some of the other highly touted offensive defensemen, and there's a few who are very similar to Heinola in maybe a little bit more advanced of a way, 5'10", 5'11", great at transition, all that sort of stuff. I bet you if Winnipeg were to take a defenseman like that, they'd get calls, and they'd probably explore calls with Ville Heinola as well in an attempt to find balance on the roster, knowing that the skill set was replicated.
Ice actually lost last night after 2 blowout wins at home. They're playing again tonight. It was interesting from that athletic piece, and folks, you can go there. The players, the writers like Murat covering the Winnipeg Jets made the selections for theirs. Both Matt Savoy and Connor Geekie both ended up going to the Columbus Blue Jackets, courtesy of Aaron Portzline. Wouldn't that be something if that happened?
I mean, that I messaged Porty right away in the mock draft thread that we had going. And I'm like, hey, if you need a tour of rural Manitoba at any time, just get that John Deere hat out, and we'll go for a ride. Because I mean, Dominion City, and I don't know the Matachuk family, so I don't know if they still have roots there. And then of course Strathclair as well. I mean, this is some of Manitoba's salt of the earth, absolutely. And I just imagine those two joining Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic down the road. What a strange pipeline that would have become.
No doubt. There's some irony in there somewhere, I'm sure. Anything else stand out to you from last night? One of the things that I think a lot of people didn't realize, I mean, you think back to the Seth Jones trade and go, wow, okay, Columbus has 2 picks. Who would have thought that the Buffalo Sabres selection that they got from Jack Eichel would be in the top half of the draft? Buffalo all of a sudden seems to be in a good spot. And obviously Montreal, I mean, they worked hard for that number 1 pick this year, and they got it. And that's going to make everything around the draft in Montreal, I think, that much more of a spectacle as well, not to mention all the talent coming into the league via the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be at that draft, and I just look forward to the crowd response. I look forward to the chanting and the, crazy Canadiens fans or what have you as well. I think that Montreal is in a unique spot. They've changed some elements of, management. They've changed coaching, and we'll see what happens in their future. They've got a lot of young talent. You might, if you're the Montreal Canadiens, think that you could really accelerate, a rebuild, if you feel like you need to use that word, with the number 1 overall pick, with that young talent. And I gotta say, what if they come making a sizable pitch for a Pierre-Luc Dubois type as well? I mean, that team's they weren't necessarily, I to go as far as they did last year, I think was a little bit surprising. But for them to fall off as far as they did, also a little bit surprising. And they might think that they can get back into the top half in a hurry if they make the right moves.
Hey, just quickly before we go, what do you think of the games last night? I mean, that's a great comeback by the Maple Leafs. Austin Matthews stepping up big time. And the Oilers coming all the way back to tie it and then losing in crushing fashion. That was a real Jekyll and Hyde game for Edmonton. And many of their issues were completely self-inflicted, I thought.
Well, I mean, was that Duncan Keith on that overtime goal?
It was Duncan Keith. Yeah, he got completely. Oh, and by the way, some breaking news just over while we've been speaking. Darnell Nurse is suspended for Game 6, so that's a huge loss for Edmonton, facing elimination going into LA.
I mean, good luck, Edmonton after that. And I mean, here's the thing, and I don't want to make, because I followed the Edmonton Oilers for a lot of years, right? I followed them probably as closely for a lot of years as I follow the Jets now. And to see to see Winnipeg have some struggles and get to the spot where it is now, having missed the playoffs. Some of this stuff in Winnipeg's case is the result of them making decisions that are completely defensible. Some of it seems completely out of their control, like a Dustin Byfuglien exit or what have you. You can kind of follow the plot. But if you're the Edmonton Oilers and you've trusted the prime of Connor McDavid's career to Mike Smith in net, and you're scoring 4 goals a game in the playoffs, and you're enduring those giveaways. You got Koskinen as a backup in that situation, and Duncan Keith, who you acquired at a great price, to not necessarily have the wheels to keep up to a play like that cost you an overtime goal. And you can go back and back and back, and it's never just hindsight talking. You can go to the moment of analysis, and you can find, some real confusion. You can't find the plot as well in Edmonton. And of course, they're in the first round of the playoffs right now, and power to them. I just think that self-inflicted was a great word on the ice, with the decisions they've made off the ice as well. And you begin to wonder just to what degree that Connor McDavid prime has been squandered, and has been squandered since the moment they won that draft lottery.
Well, and Draisaitl was under the weather. He played phenomenal last night. They both score. They both get on the board, and you still lose. And Remo and I were talking about earlier. I mean, I still can't, listen, it's defensible. You want to bring Mike Smith back. You don't have many other options. Fine. To sign him for 2 years at that age, I mean, I can't imagine there was a 2-year deal on the table anywhere else in the National Hockey League. And listen, I mean, they're running it back with the same guys. I'll be surprised if Koskinen, to be honest, doesn't get the start. I mean, Woodcroft won a lot of games with Koskinen on his watch over the course of the second half of the season. And it's been all Mike Smith to this point, and you can certainly point at goaltending, certainly in Game 1 and at times last night in Game 5, as a big reason why they're facing the chopping block when they drop the puck in Game 6.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost surprising that they haven't gone it that well earlier. But maybe that's the dark side. I was talking about Mark Scheifele, and, you want that winning culture so that people get valued. Maybe that's the dark side of veteran reputations, like Mike Smith being the guy in a situation where he clearly hasn't been good enough to be the guy, or Duncan Keith getting acquired for, I believe Caleb Jones was part of that. And I rate that player as a highly talented up-and-coming player as well. And so you just wonder, why reputation or why past results have anything to do with those moments. And if Edmonton does go down to the Los Angeles Kings, power to the Kings. They've improved so much, and my goodness, Kopitar, of course, Philip Danault as well. At the same time, you have to think that they should have been able to get more out of McDavid, Draisaitl, et cetera, in Edmonton.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Murat of The Athletic is with us. We're going to be talking to Dan Fink coming up and set up tonight's Game 3. I mean, if you watch the games in Milwaukee, and I know you were all over it on the weekend, it's almost hard to believe that this team is facing elimination tonight, the way that they played. But playoff hockey is a funny thing. What do you make of the Moose's plight coming into hopefully 3 games on home ice? But it's going to take a win tonight and a win Friday to force a Game 5.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I watched both games. I had Daniel Fink on the call. I'm excited for those games to be broadcast on TSN tonight as well, and throughout this homestand, as long as the Moose can extend it. On the ice, Manitoba has completely controlled the flow of play. Their defensemen have the green light to jump up into the play. Chisholm has been dynamic. Hanel controls the play. Leon Gavanka is a dangerous player. Jimmy Olenny, the blue line has so much, as before talking about Dylan Sandberg and Johnny Kovacevic as well. There's so much good that comes from the amount of pressure they put up the ice. They turn over pucks in the neutral zone. They're always on the attack. But the one thing that they can't do right now is get to the middle of the ice. And Milwaukee has completely parked the bus, 5 guys between the dots and in front of the net, and they're just daring Manitoba to shoot from far away. And so they're blasting away. They're looking for tips. They're looking for, bounces or screens or what have you. What they haven't been able to do is generate those grade A's from right in tight. And so the question is going to be, do they keep blasting away, and do they finally get paid for it because they've gotten so many shots? And Devin Cooley's played phenomenally. Or does this strange commitment to just putting 5 guys in the way, could that possibly be what really has been an excellent performance from the Moose so far?
Well, and a funny thing is, I don't think there's any way they don't go with Cooley, but Connor Ingram, who was just playing the last couple of games for the Nashville Predators, back along with Winnipeg native Cody Glass. So they're getting some reinforcements at the right time. But Moose know what they're going to do. We're going to talk about it with Fink coming up next. Murat, great stuff as always. Love the mock draft with the rest of your colleagues at The Athletic, as well as your piece on Barry Trotz this week. And I would imagine even in the offseason, the local team is going to give you plenty to write about over the course of the next little while. We'll look forward to catching up next week, my friend.
Right on. Plenty to write about. Plenty on the way.
There is Murat Atesh of The Athletic at WGP Murat. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. And if you're not subscribed to The Athletic, what the heck are you waiting for? All right, we finished off talking Moose with Murat. We're going to get right back to more Moose conversation with Daniel Fink. The Moose trying to avoid the ability to make tee times with a win tonight. And of course, Breezy Bend opening up on the weekend. Our home for a number of years. If you're looking for a great golfing home for your family with a solid junior program, women's program, practice facility, clubhouse, patio, and great improvements to the course, Breezy Bend's the place to be. Talk to Corey Johnson, find out about options for this year as well as into the future. And you can find out more on the course over at breezybend.ca. If you're looking for a new vehicle in town, our friends at Knott Autocorp have been with us for years and are the place to go before anywhere else. If you're thinking about getting a new whip, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? And make sure to ask them about their Tesla Experience program if you're interested in learning more about a potential pivot to an electric vehicle. Knott Autocorp, Waverly and McGillivray, and online at knott.ca. I'm certainly hoping there'll be a few celebratory 1919s cheers downtown after a Moose win tonight. Of course, 1919, the flagship brand of Little Brown Jug, Winnipeg's favorite local beer. You can pop down and see him at William Avenue at the brewery and tap room and pick up all your favorite Little Brown Jug favorites. You can grab it at your local beer store or Manitoba liquor marts, or if you prefer, delivery citywide from Little Brown Jug Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Find out more online at littlebrownjug.ca. All right, let's bring the Fink in. He's getting ready for a little TV time tonight. It's do or die for the Manitoba Moose, and the voice of the Moose, Daniel Fink, joins us from Canada Life Center. Dad, how's it going? What's the vibe around the team right now? It seemed like they were pretty loose despite a must-win situation this evening. Oh, we just got to get your mic hooked up. Hold on one sec here. Are you on, or is that on our end, Reem?
No, that's something with him. Hold on.
Okay, let's just make sure we're hearing Dan properly. It might be collecting. And by the way, folks, a little bit of news. We did mention, and I encourage you all to get down to the game tonight. I'm going to be there. Really looking forward to it. But if you're unable to do it, Dan making the TSN debut, I believe, along with Eric Meach and Paul Edmonds, the voice of the Winnipeg Jets, will be making has he done Moose games before? I can't remember, but he'll be doing the Moose game tonight on 680 CJOB. While we get Dan up, let's get Michael Remis back in here. And Remo, I know we've talked a lot about this Moose this season. It is somewhat stunning that they are in the situation that they're in right now. But as we heard from practice yesterday, a number of our colleagues, and Scott Billick was there still is a level of confidence, not only because of the season that they've had, but because of the way that they played in Milwaukee, just getting sort of snake bit by a hot goalie that they're going to have to find a way to solve tonight.
Yeah, if you look at, a lot of the predictive analytics, like expected goals, Jacob Stoller spilled that out nicely. We tweeted out at Sports Talk WPG. The Moose should have at least a win. It seems like they haven't been able to score. They're controlling play in terms of scoring chances, shot attempts, again, expected goals. So it just hasn't gone their way, which is why I think they should be confident heading into Game 3. I mean, all you need is one at a time, but they're definitely not getting outplayed. That's for sure. And now they return home to Canada Life Center.
Well, it's got to be winning time tonight. As we mentioned, the voice of the Moose joins us today. Fink, what's the vibe around the club as we go into a must-win situation tonight?
Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to get all the technical glitches out of the way before going on TV here tonight. So I hope you can hear me now. But you know what? We were downstairs kind of getting our media room and stuff like that set up, which is coincidentally kind of right next to the players' meal room for kind of pregame meal and stuff like that. And they're loose. They're feeling pretty good. I mean, the whole kind of theme of the last couple of days is they like the way they played for the most part in Milwaukee. They just didn't get rewarded for it. They didn't have a whole ton of finish. They ran into a hot goaltender and a lot of things combined, and they came out with a couple of losses. And you know what? In a best-of-7 series, you'd probably be coming out of it thinking, okay, well, we've got time to let this play out. Unfortunately, in a best-of-5, they're facing elimination tonight, but they're pretty confident in what they've done so far. They're confident in how they play on home ice, and they're feeling pretty good heading into this game.
You know, I got to give you credit. I mean, you did just a phenomenal job of calling the excitement of those games from Milwaukee. I mean, it was really fun. It kind of took me back to my early Moose days when we didn't have the opportunity to watch the games on AHL TV and, you know, hanging on every minute of the road games of the playoffs before the team came back. And it really did sound sort of as you described. It was like the Moose were absolutely in control, but this Cooley character on the other side seemingly summoning, some of his greatest play at the time. I mean, how important do you think getting that first goal, getting a lead tonight, getting the crowd into it, and knowing that they can beat this guy will be in extending this series to Game 4 and hopefully Game 5?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a situation where all is lost if they don't score the first goal, because as we've seen in this series so far, the Moose have done a pretty good job of coming back. The problem is they've given up that game-winning goal in the last few minutes or 40 seconds of the game, and it just don't have enough time after that. So they have been able to get back into games when they're on the back foot. But as you said, getting off to a good start, engaging what's going to be a loud crowd here at Canada Life Center, giving themselves that boost of confidence early, that's going to be important, getting off to that good start, because we have seen, despite the Moose putting up more than 40 shots in both games, they basically haven't had a shot on goal through the first 9 to 10 minutes of either game. So they'll be looking up to get off to a hotter start. And could you imagine the shot total if they are able to get off to a better start in one of these games? So like Murat was saying, they'll be looking to control the front of the net a little better in the offensive zone at least. So that's going to be one of the keys there. And they got to find a way to make the starter, whoever it may be, whether it's Cooley or Ingram, make his life a little miserable.
I know Leon Gavanka has kind of echoed the feelings of the club, speaking with our good friend Jacob Stoller, saying that there's not a guy in the room that doesn't think they can win 3 straight games against these guys, especially. They know this team very well. I mean, they just had those 2 performances, but it is a real sense of urgency, I'd imagine, every shift tonight. From Mark Morrison's perspective, what did the coach have to say this week coming out of 2 good performances, but again, not good enough when it comes to playoff hockey?
Yeah, and he was kind of on that too, about finding their chances from the right spot. So he initially kind of coming out of the games was saying, well, we weren't getting our chances in the right spot. Then he had a chance to go back, look at the video, kind of look at some of the analytics from the game. He said, well, we're getting our chances from the right spot, but we're not hitting the net, or they're getting blocked. And that's something that Milwaukee does very, very well. And while a lot of the hype goes to the Moose defense, and rightfully so, it's a dynamic group, the Milwaukee defense is kind of sneaky good. They're a veteran group and for the most part pretty heavy in front of the net, and they've done a great job at collapsing towards the net. And even if the Moose are able to get past that first layer, which especially when you're shooting from the point is what you're trying to do at the very least, that second layer has been excellent at either clearing pucks, clearing rebounds, boxing out, or just not letting the puck get through. So that's what they're looking to do. They're looking to control the front of the net, and they're just looking to get that finish back. I mean, we saw them put up 6 goals or more in 3 of their final 4 home games, or 4 games, of the regular season. And they hit one of these patches that they have throughout the season where it becomes very tough to score. That'll happen when you're very much a blue-collar team and you don't necessarily have those natural goal scorers. So with a few days in between games, couple of practices to sort those hands out, and you know what? The player ranked 3rd best ice in the National Hockey League, and arguably some of the best ice in the AHL to play on, might be able to enough to turn their fortunes.
Now, Daniel Fink, voice of the Moose, will be calling the game tonight on TSN 3 as Paul Edmonds takes over on CJOB for tonight's playoff broadcast. Joining us live from Canada Life Center, Declan Chisholm had a couple monster games. I know there was some question as to his availability. First of all, let us know how he's doing. Will he play tonight, or do we know that at this point? And how impactful he was in those games, and how much of a difference maker he could be tonight if he's in.
Well, he was a regular participant in the morning skate, so take from that what you will. But it's the playoffs, so things a little cagey at the moment. So I guess we'll find out in what is it now? About 4 hours time, and when he's out, or if he's out for morning skates, pregame skate, their warm-ups. So no 100% on that one, but you know what? He was excellent in those two games. Leon Gavanka along with Chisholm as well. That pairing has been so much fun to watch this season. They really have found some fantastic chemistry, and through those two games, I mean, they were on the ice for all three Moose goals, and Chisholm was at the primary point, whether it was his 2 assists or his goal on all 3 goals. So they've been important parts of this, and the Moose are going to need their forwards, I think, to kind of push a little more. They had a great effort. No real passengers those first 2 games, but they're just going to need to win that extra battle in front of the net.
Do we expect any changes? I mean, sometimes coaches will maybe tweak lines a little bit when you're having, so you're playing well, but not getting offensive success. Others will say, hey, let's just keep doing what we're doing and we should be rewarded. I mean, just gathering from practice this week, from the morning skate today, do you expect any lineup changes that we know of? Or at least how do you think Mark Morrison's going to be handling this challenge tonight, knowing that they have to win to see another day?
Seems like there's a couple of lines that might change up a little bit here tonight, moving AC Mont onto a line with Gustafson and Cease with Murat and Paganski or Barron. I'm not quite sure where it all landed out. So, again, we'll have to wait for warm-ups to sort it all out. But it looks like that top 6 is going to shuffle a little bit. The Meyer, Jones, Polai line, that's going to be eternal for Mark Morrison. He knows what he's going to get from those guys. And then when it comes to filling in some of the gaps, I mean, Christian Vesalainen was also a question mark coming into today. Luke Johnson didn't play the previous game. You would imagine that he's going to come back into the lineup. The Moose have been kind of holding off playing him in back-to-backs after such a tough season due to injuries. So you would imagine he's coming back in. So there might be some minor changes, but I wouldn't imagine that there's going to be anything earth-shattering ahead of this pivotal game 3.
Special teams certainly was an issue. I mean, they had, I believe, 0 for 6. And 0 for 6 is not a huge body of work. I mean, it's not a massive sample, but we know how impactful it is. And I know that the team has been working on the special teams, particularly the power play in practice. It goes without saying, a boost on special teams would be huge in moving the Moose a little bit forward to getting back right in the series.
Oh yeah, I mean, you go 1 for 6, and you might be talking about an entirely different series at this point, right? That's how narrow this has been so far. So, I mean, for the power play, I mean, they got off to a rough start in that first game. Kind of the first opportunity wasn't really their second chance. They had some pretty good looks, just couldn't bury third chance. Not much going on. The second game, though, they had some pretty good looks. I mean, they had David Gustafson fire one right across the goal mouth at one point. They hit a post right after one of the power plays. So there were chances. They had their looks in that second game. It just kind of came down to finish. But definitely one of the keys for the Moose is execution. I mean, they've had a few power plays where they win that all-important opening draw. They get it into a good spot, and then somebody fans on a shot or a pass, and it's heading back down the ice. And the biggest struggle for this team has been getting into the zone cleanly. The breakout is kind of stumbled at times and kind of seems to feed itself. If they're getting cleanly a couple of times, they're off and running, but they have a couple of passes offline, and it can be a struggle for the rest of that unit. So we'll see how they fare here today. As you mentioned, it's been definitely one of the focuses. On the other side of things, the penalty kill didn't even have to do any work in game 2. They had the puck so much, there wasn't really an opportunity for them to take any penalties. So that'll be a key as well, because this Milwaukee power play is absolutely deadly. So the Moose will be trying to stay out of the box again while taking advantage of their own opportunities, because that can definitely be what swings it.
Now, of course, it should be a great atmosphere tonight, knowing what playoff hockey means here in Winnipeg and Manitoba, and the season that the Moose have had. Hopefully we'll have more playoff hockey, but tickets still available for the game. What do fans need to know if they want to make a decision to get down and throw the whites on and see what the Moose can do?
Yep, there's still some great seats available at great prices all throughout the rink. So you'll be able to find the price point or the view that you want. Those are still available. It's going to be a good crowd, but there are some good seats still available. So be sure to visit moosehockey.com/tickets to get yours. And if you're on the fence, don't worry about it. Just come on downtown. It's going to be a great night. The atmosphere is going to be fantastic. I mean, this first Moose home playoff game in about 4 years. So it's some pent-up energy here for the fans. I've seen the playoff intro video is absolutely brilliant. The guys here in the Game Ops crew have done a fantastic job of getting ready for playoffs. You've probably been able to see some of it going on over my shoulder as a preview, unless my my fat head's in the way of the screen. So it's going to be a great night. And as you've been mentioning, Huss, if you can't make it down or holding off until Friday because you have a pretty good feeling about tonight, then you can catch the game on TSN3 or through the TSN app. You can catch it on 680 CJOB with Paul Edmonds and Mitchell Clinton. It's really going to be a great night. Really excited to showcase some Calder Cup playoff hockey for as wide a viewership and listenership as we can here tonight. So it's a lot of work has gone into getting ready for this game, and we're happy to get everybody down here or watching wherever you are, wherever your support is. We appreciate it.
Well, and I'll say this. I mean, you getting into the TSN booth tonight. How big's the makeup and wardrobe team that you'll be working with going into this evening, Finker?
Weirdly, they don't keep those guys around for me. They know that they don't have to do anything
Exactly.
with this, right? Yeah, it's a lost cause. So they let the radio guy go on the TV. We'll just stay away from that. It's really exciting. So
Meech in the booth with you as well?
Absolutely, yeah. He'll be riding along with me on that one. Jamie Thomas and Austin Siragusa are going to be on the desk. I mean, that's one thing about this is very much an in-house production for us, so it's going to look a little different than if you're used to watching Jets on TSN. It's going to be a little bit different here tonight, a little more Moose flair with some of the graphics and things like that. So it's been a lot of work for a lot of people who've really stepped up to help out, and really proud of our organization for the product that we've been able to put together and will be putting together here tonight, and really excited for that. But of course, the end line to that is, as much as I would love for you to listen or watch what we're doing, I'd much prefer you to see you in the stands here and be able to hear you on the ice mics. Looking forward to it here tonight.
Well, I was just about to tell you, I mean, regular listeners know what a big fan I am of your work and the calls you've done on CGOB and on CGOB.com this year. I think it'll be a great introduction for many folks watching on the tube. However, I won't be listening to you tonight. I'll be at the game. My big decision is which Moose jersey I got to throw on for it and be a part of the crowd tonight. I think it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. I know many of our listeners and viewers are going to be there, and hopefully we'll have a big game on Friday to talk about potentially pushing this one to a deciding game. Just quickly to confirm, and I know we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but Game 4 and Game 5 times, we know where they're going to be played if the Moose can extend this series and hopefully put into a position to win it in a deciding Game 5.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're feeling good about tonight but can't make it down, tickets are available now for Games 4 and Games 5. We're feeling pretty good about things. So you can get yours at moosehockey.com/tickets. It's a 7 o'clock puck drop on Friday right here behind me, and a 2 o'clock afternoon matinee on Sunday. So looking forward to seeing you all in Game 5.
Great stuff, Dan. Have a great call tonight. Say what's up to Derek, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing a big-time performance with their backs against the wall to push this one for a great Friday night playoff game also there at Canada Life Center. Good luck tonight.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for all the support, Huss. It's been awesome, and hope to talk to you tomorrow, maybe to talk about tonight's win.
We're just getting started, buddy. We're just getting started. There it is, Dan Fink. You can follow him on Twitter at Daniel the Fink. And again, if you've got some time tonight, get on down to the rink tonight. It's going to be great. As I said, I have already committed to the Moose. Otherwise, I might go to Steinbach to see that Game 7 of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. But no shortage of options for great hockey tonight. And considering what we've been through for the last couple of years, playoff hockey is what it's all about, and should be a great environment tonight at Canada Life Center. All right, we got to get Remis back in here and talk a little bit more about the games in the National Hockey League tonight. But as we spoke with JD earlier, Justin Dunk, hard to believe, but training camp's getting going this weekend for the Canadian Football League. We're going to have preseason action in less than 2 weeks. And just around the corner is the beginning of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers season. Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Bombers, will be hosting Bomber fans at the tailgate section outside the stadium all season long. And of course, a big sponsor of the Gold Eyes too, who get going this weekend as well. Of course, Princess Auto is the spot where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Visit them at one of their 2 Winnipeg locations, or you can shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Heck, if you're somewhere and you're not able to get to the game, BP might be a great spot. You'll have some phenomenal playoff action in the National Hockey League, which we'll get to. And you can tell them to make sure they got TSN 3 on and see what the Moose and Admirals have for us from Canada Life Center. Check out those gourmet pizzas, Boston wings, ice cold schooners, and more. And if you're staying home tonight, you can always check out their game day deals and order online at bostonpizza.com. And maybe a victory blizzard for fans after the game tonight. Of course, our friends at Nicky DQ are ready for you at any of their 4 locations. The DQ in Niverville, speaking of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, the newest team in the league next year. So much excitement down in the Niverville community for that club. And of course, the 3 Winnipeg locations, DQ St. Anne's, DQ Polo Park, and DQ Northgate. Pop by, grab a blizzard, try one of those new stack burgers. And if you do need a cake for a party or gathering, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll custom make it for you and get it ready to pick up quick and easy at any of your local Nick and Nicky DQs. And tell you what I'm going to have tonight, maybe one of those Canadian Club and Gingers. I'll save it for a victory drink after the game tonight. But if you are popping by your local beer store or Manitoba liquor store, make sure to pick up the new ready-to-drink Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, available in 6-packs and in cans. And if you're in Manitoba liquor marts any point over the course of the next month, check out the Canadian Club display. You can grab Canada's favorite whiskey, and you get a free can to try the new drink of the summer, the Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, ready to go. All right, let's get Remo back in here because we do got to get to Coolbet Lines, talk about what's happening tonight. But I'll tell you what, all this NHL action, despite how huge these games are, especially the one in Calgary, kind of seems secondary with all that's happening on the local scene tonight with the Moose, the MJ, and of course the Ice playing on the road, looking to go up 3-1, coming back home on Friday.
Yeah, I saw Mike Pittman in chat saying, go Pistons. So we're definitely paying attention to that here. Moose, Ice. So, and NHL playoffs, some big game 5s. We had the night of game 5s last night, where every game was game 5. But tonight we only have 2 game 5s, Washington, Florida. Florida trying to take a series lead at home. Calgary as well. Calgary, I thought, had a slow start against Dallas. Maybe they figured them out after scoring a couple goals finally in game 4. And Pittsburgh looking to put away the Rangers. Unfortunately for Jets fans, probably not going to get that additional first-round pick. So a couple games to watch. A lot of hockey. Great time.
Well, hey, we've seen 3-1 deficits erased plenty over the last 20 years in the National Hockey League. So let's start there and see what the Rangers are on the Coolbet Lines. And hey, the Rangers are a favorite. They're laying minus 125 at home to get back into this series and push it to Pittsburgh for game 6. Minus 125 for the Rangers. If you do think the Pittsburgh Penguins, led by Crosby, who very well may have been the best player in the playoffs so far this year, plus 107 for the Penguins to advance tonight with a win in Madison Square Garden and move on to the second round. Panthers and Capitals. Panthers with some momentum after a clutch comeback win in game number 4, preventing them from going down 3-1. Verhaeghe with the winner and the tying goal with just 2 minutes left, pushing this one to a best of 3. Florida Panthers back at home, minus 217 favorites. Capitals plus 185 on the road. And Remo, no surprise that the Calgary Flames are favored once again. They finally solved Jake Ottinger and got more than a goal or 2, putting 4 up. Johnny Gaudreau with that master class of a penalty shot goal to give them the 2-0 lead. Flames minus 217 at home. Dallas plus 180. I got to say it. I think I'm rolling with the home teams. I hope and I'm expecting the Rangers to have a big performance like the Moose with their backs against the wall tonight. And I think Florida and Calgary come back with the momentum after winning crucial game 4s and get it done in front of their home fans. Where are you at?
I was going to say take Pittsburgh just because they're the underdog and I think they've outplayed the Rangers in the series. It's tough to bet against.
They have. They absolutely have. I just think that the Rangers come up with a big performance. Sometimes facing elimination brings out the best in teams. And hey, they've put a lot into this series. They know Andrew Kopp has been a big part of what they've done well. What they haven't done well is defend. And for a guy, and maybe they were just leaning on Shesterkin so much all season long. They're 16th in the playoffs in just about every defensive category so far. Credit to Pittsburgh for making that happen. They're going to need to be a lot better. And I certainly, maybe I'm just hoping that they do, both from a Jets fans perspective at maybe getting that first round pick, but particularly just to see some more drama of game 6 and potentially a game 7.
I agree. I just think I don't think they should be that much of a favorite. It should be a bit closer. So if you're going to get Pittsburgh plus money, sure, I would lean Pittsburgh just because of the numbers, but I would obviously like to see the Rangers win. I think Andrew Kopp's fit in well. They're going to need to stop some of these goals or stop giving up such high quality chances. Either one. Florida, maybe this is the turning point for them, that they hit the overtime winner. And then, Calgary, maybe they've figured it out now. It just took them a couple. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. But I'm on. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I'm definitely on Calgary tonight, and I won't make the same mistake of nailing them on the puck line, which I've done a couple times unsuccessfully so far this playoffs. But I do like Calgary to win. And Remo, if you go up to the top, we have AHL lines for tonight.
What?
The Moose and Admirals are on the board right now. And to be honest, the line just shifted right in front of my face. Milwaukee plus 141 underdog, Manitoba Moose minus 182. And if you think that this is the moment that the Moose break out and win by 2, you do get a great number on that, plus 154. We've also got a total, the over-under goals, 5.5 is the number on this one. I said we've got the spread. You've got home tie away. You can pick Moose in regulation at minus 111, although that takes out the opportunity of overtime and then the double chance as well. It's been a little while. We've had a bunch of WHL numbers occasionally on. Hadn't seen AHL on Coolbet in a little while. And I don't know. I feel like I want to bet the Moose, but I also don't want to feel responsible for mushing the Moose if they don't win tonight's game. And I've laid a wager with our friends at Coolbet on tonight's game.
Yeah, I don't mind Moose. If you want to feel dangerous, Moose minus 1.5 or Moose in regulation minus 111. I don't really see value on the money line. But that's kind of cool. Didn't know you could bet on Moose games.
Yeah, well, and one of the funny things, I'm gonna have to talk to our friends at Coolbet as well, because, and if you've been on the site, and I don't see any WHL lines right now, maybe they put some up later on. They often have had them for the weekend, for whatever reason, and I don't know, maybe they've been doing this for a while. The Moose are still the Winnipeg Ice are still listed as the Kootenay Ice.
Really?
On the odds. I guess that's somewhat on me. For not mentioning that, hey guys, maybe tell the people at the back end that the team moved to Winnipeg a few seasons ago. So anyways, we don't see a line for the WHL. We do see one for the Moose. It's all there at Coolbet. If you've never played at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST when making your first deposit. We'll get you a 100% bonus, doubling it up to $200 on the first one. Got to tell you, I'm really excited for this game tonight. Looking forward to seeing a lot of friends and familiar faces out there. And I will tell you this, folks, if you would like to go to the game, and you can go to the game, I can't confirm this, but I think I'm going to have an extra pair of tickets. So if you would like to go to the game and you're with us right now on YouTube, send us an email to winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. I'm going to know in the next half hour or so if we do have those tickets. And if we do, we'll just select someone that's able to go. We'll send you an email back right away. So if you do send an email into winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com, just make sure to use or note the, maybe use your chat name, if you will, and we'll know who you are, but also the email to send those tickets to. Hoping to send another one of our listeners to the game right now, because then these would actually be personal, because I actually put something in for a Jets season ticket contest, and I think I've got them. I just want to make sure they're there before they come. So we'll do that. Hopefully grab another winner. And Remo, I'm crossing my fingers. We're talking to one of the members of the Winnipeg Ice tomorrow about a big win in Moose Jaw. And of course, whether it's Fink or maybe Derek Meach coming on the program to talk about a big win for the Moose. And of course, we'll always have time to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. And who knows, maybe we'll have some more interesting tidbits on Barry Trotz, the NHL coaching search for the Winnipeg Jets. And I know we'll hit it all with Rowicki on the program tomorrow.
Yeah, there was, as far as the Jets head coaching search and Barry Trotz goes, Elliot Friedman had some updates on the 32 Thoughts at the end today, just saying that one name that he had heard, around with the Jets is Alain Vigneault. No surprise, with his history with the Manitoba Moose that they would be interested in, and he got fired by Philadelphia. Said he wants to prove that it wasn't on him, the Flyers, and I think we can agree there's a lot of issues going on with the Flyers, and I'm sure Brandon can tell us firsthand tomorrow. Also said he thought the Flyers may back up the Brinks truck. Brinks getting a lot of free advertising now that Barry Trotz is a free agent. He mentioned that. One thing also, Canada at the Worlds, they had a pre-tournament game today. They won 4-2 against USA in a shootout. Lowry and Dubois had assists. Dubois scored in the shootout. Thought I would mention that as well. Oh, yeah, I wanted to mention this, Huss. The Calder, where do you stand on this debate in the hockey world? The Calder Trophy nominees are in. Zegras, Bunting, and Seider are the nominees. A lot of people mad online that Bunting is a Calder Trophy nominee, saying he's too old.
Yeah.
He's
26?
He's 26. He's under the age. He is eligible. I think the debate ends there.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, they might want to lower the age if they don't want 26-year-olds winning it. I mean, this goes back to Sergei Makarov, who won it in the late 80s. I think he was like 31 years old after coming over from Russia, and everyone thought it was a bit of a joke, so they put that in. To be honest, it's much ado about nothing because Murat Seider is running away with this award.
Yes.
And I know Bunting and Zegras are the flashier names. Murat Seider, I was just looking at this up. Listen to his numbers for his rookie season, playing for one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. He finished 19th in defenseman scoring, played every single game, 7 goals, 43 assists for 50 points, was only -9 on a heavily minus team. And Remo, he was up there amongst the leaders in ice time, over 23 minutes a game, including over 18 minutes at even strength. Did it all for the Detroit Red Wings. This is a pick that I think is going to turn into a masterclass for Steve Yzerman. He already looks like one of the top defensemen in the league right now. It should be a slam dunk. I think he runs away with it. And if he doesn't, it's because people weren't paying attention to the Detroit Red Wings.
Yes, I agree with everything on Seider. He also gets the bump up for, do you know how hard it is to be a young top pairing defenseman in the NHL? I think Jonas Brodin got that bump a few years ago, going up against Jacob Trouba.
And especially on a bad team.
Yeah, especially you get a degree of difficulty way harder. You know, Bunting degree of difficulty next to Matthews and Marner. Please, I could score goals on a line with those guys. More on Bunting. I mean, he shouldn't be penalized because he wasn't that great as like a 23-year-old. Some guys take longer to develop. So he is the appropriate age. It's his first year. A lot of people mad online. Huh?
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, he was riding shotgun with Marner and Matthews. I mean, I'm sure if you put half of the guys on that team in that position, they would have had maybe not the same numbers, but would have been there. And that's not going to help him outside of the Toronto market when it comes to the Rookie of the Year. But I don't even think there's much of a discussion. Moritz Seider running away. I thought that Bunting might not even be a finalist for the award. I thought Lucas Raymond and the Red Wings might have 2 players in there, but he didn't get the nod. Listen, I got no issue with Bunting being a finalist for the award. But if somehow he wins the award, then I'll be mad online and mad on this program because Seider absolutely is the choice. Hey, before we go, I know you always like to drop jersey takes.
Oh, yeah.
If the Oilers are able to win game number 6, should they not, and I know they've committed to wearing these jerseys, the brutal blue jerseys throughout the playoffs that we saw last night, but would it not be smart after losing 2 of 3 to maybe switch it up? I think the orange jerseys are garbage too, to be honest with you. But even those ones are better than the dark blue ones that they've been wearing over the course of this season and they've been wearing in the playoffs so far.
Okay, don't get me started here. I'm watching the Oilers games. These are the worst jerseys in the league. You can't
They're
even
right there
read,
with the Ducks. They're right there with the Ducks.
You can't even read the numbers. And I'm watching, they're wearing these blue jerseys. They don't even look, they have this monochrome one color logo. I guess because they didn't want to pay the extra money to get the full color print. And you watch the game, there is not one fan in the stands wearing this blue jersey. That is how terrible it is.
They hate them.
The orange jersey is like construction worker bright orange. Like you're going hunting and you want to make sure people can see you. It is the most bright orange color. It is so awful to look at. You need sunglasses. Meanwhile, they have this beautiful blue classic jersey in the bullpen on waiting to be brought in. How are you not wearing that jersey? What are they doing with this horrible blue navy jersey? It is It's an abomination. I don't say that often, but it's
no,
a
you're
worse
right.
jersey. They would
And
clearly be winning if they wore a normal jersey. Clearly.
It would make everybody play better. The orange ones, they had the excitement of McDavid coming in, and I knew they switched to the orange ones because they were going to sell 1 million of them, which they did. I mean, you saw the crowd last night. It was essentially looked like an orange out. I'll never understand how they went to the. I mean, they would have been better off using the Spawn jerseys from 2000 and 2001 than the ones that they've got right there. There you have them if you see them right now with the oil drop logo.
That oil drop jersey is sick. I loved that jersey. I used to wear it all the time in NHL 2002 with Sean Horkoff and Jason Smith, who was on that team, Ethan Morrow. God, I would be that jersey all the time. So that pissed me off. The other thing that pissed me off last night, too, I'm watching the Leafs comeback. Their goal song, the most misplaced goal song.
Oh, Hall & Oates.
Hall & Oates. Like, good song in The Wedding Singer when they're doing the cake montage and the dress trying on montage. But as a goal song in the Stanley Cup playoffs, big thumbs down. It is horrible. It does not get you fired up. I feel like I'm at a bar mitzvah listening to that. It's awful.
I have to give you props on the lid today, celebrating your Kings win last night.
There you go.
That's the that's like the NWA style. You need to get the script one.
I have that one, except the underbill is green, so I'm not sure if it would work.
Yeah,
if it would work. If they win the series, I'll wear that one. I do have a couple jerseys too. I don't know why. I like their jersey. I went to a game. The reason why I do like the Kings, I went to a Kings game 2006. And I was really impressed with the fans there. And, we didn't really have the Jets, so going to an NHL game was a bit of a novelty. So that's kind of why I just couldn't believe how into it, hockey in LA. So I went to a practice there one time too when I was on vacation. So
yeah, I went to a game at the at crypto.com, formerly the Staples Center, and saw it was fun. Couple fun things in the chat. I see Blue Cat Animation saying, but we can all agree Nashville has the worst jerseys. No, Nashville is better than the Oilers and better than the Ducks. I will die on the hill that the Ducks jerseys are the worst.
Okay, we'll bring them up. Ducks are easily the worst.
Right there.
Easily.
Although it's worse for the Oilers to be wearing the current jerseys that they are, considering the options that they have right now. And I do see someone in chat, Hustler's $40 daddy.
That's Ryan Friesen.
Is that Friesen? Freezer, listen, I was getting a little nervous there when Dallas was up 2-1. I'm still, for those of you who don't know, we had a one bet earlier that the Chiefs would not get to the AFC Championship game. I won that one. And then Freezer has doubled down with me with his take. The Flames were going out in the first round of the playoffs from a few months ago. And hey, they're in a good position. Down to a best of 3. Huge game tonight, though, with Calgary taking on Dallas.
I agree that these Nashville home jerseys are pretty bad. They had good ones before, but they're not as bad as the Ducks. The Ducks are easily... The Ducks and Oilers have the worst. And there's no debate. Ottawa used to be pretty bad, but then they switched to these, and these are great.
They're a little bit better. I mean, they're probably still at the bottom of the league. Interested to know what people's thoughts are on the best jersey in the league. As much as I can't stand the team, I think I have to go to the Montreal Canadiens. I think the Habs red, like the red Habs jersey, is actually the best jersey in sports. And I mean, maybe I like some of the more traditional ones, and we talk about the Yankees and the Cubs, but I don't know. The Habs jersey, the home one there, they've never really touched it. They shouldn't touch it. And I think that will be theirs for a long time. The white one's relatively plain, but there's something about that home jersey for the Montreal Canadiens that I think is number one.
Yeah, Montreal's, it's pretty classic, hard to argue. I think the Florida tried to copy Montreal, and he just can't. Like, I don't like these. They need to go back to every team just needs to go back to their 90s jerseys, most of them, and they'd be better. I remember in like
not the Jets.
Yeah, I could. Jets need to wear the heritage ones, but I remember like just on jerseys like 06 or 07, like when Reebok came in, they redesigned all the jerseys and they all sucked, and now they're slowly like reverting back. If we're just talking about playoff jerseys, I'm going on a tangent. I could do this forever. The Avalanche changing their numbers to blue and their pants to blue. kind of growing on me, but I'm not crazy about it.
I'll be honest,
That
I
was this
completely
year.
missed that. They've
That
got
was
the
this
Colorado
year.
Rockies jersey in the middle. And T Will saying, what about the New Jersey jersey?
This is terrible.
That just says Jersey on it. I mean, that was so funny at the start because then they had to put out a hat, as well as what was the other one? A shirt or something like that, making fun of them. I don't know. Marty Brodeur designed those. Great goalie, not a great fashion designer, whether it be for clothes or for NHL the unis.
I love when they put out like a jersey and it's got like some stripe pattern. I think the Bombers did this too. And it's like, oh, they got 4 stripes on the shoulders because of the 4 Stanley Cups they won. Like, just make a nice jersey. No one cares about the symbolism of this jersey.
I'm in on that.
Oh,
see,
you
the
like
thing
that?
is that you're out of it. Because you don't pay any attention to a lot of other things, like for instance, soccer. But like, when you win the World Cup, you get to put a star on your jersey. Like,
oh, really?
When Italy comes out, yeah, they've got the 4 stars. That's for the four championships. And for national teams, that's neat. But listen, I'm fully in on the Bombers dropping a 2 gold stripes going into this season for back-to-backs. I'm a proponent of those sort of neat little tweaks, as long as it looks good.
Yeah, as long as it looks good. That one looked good, so I don't really care what it stands for. It's like, it's a nice design. But if you want to say that it's for the Grey Cups, go ahead. But I did like their jersey. We talked about that one before.
All right, we got to get out of here, waiters.
Yeah.
Maybe
waiters.
Don't take marriage advice from Marty Brodeur either. Yeah, no kidding. What a way to finish the show today. All right, gang, wherever you are, take in some of this playoff action tonight. Good luck to both the Dauphin Kings and the Steinbach Pistons in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League Final, Game 7 out in Steinbach. And of course, the game I'll be attending and hopefully seeing a number of you at. Game 3 tonight, Moose Admirals, Canada Life Center, do or die for Manitoba despite dominating the first 2 games. They are facing elimination. If you do want to go to the game, fire an email to winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. Should be able to pick a winner in the next half hour just upon confirmation that those tickets that I'm expecting are showing up. And we'll talk about it all tomorrow. And of course, good luck to the Ice to take a 3-1 lead. We will be talking to hopefully maybe either Matt Savoy or Connor Geeky tomorrow. I'll talk a little bit about the playoffs so far, as well as the draft lottery, and look ahead to a big day for them in Montreal in early July. Thanks to everyone that's with us. Great chat today with Murat. Awesome Canadian football update from Justin Dunk as well, and a great Moose preview from our guy, Daniel Fink, who'll be calling the game tonight on TSN 3. Thanks to the sponsors, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Vita Health, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Assiniboia Downs, Canadian Club, and of course our betting partners over at Coolbet Canada. Tomorrow on the program, Brandon Rowicki's going to join us. We'll also have one of the members of the Winnipeg Ice, and we'll have some aftermath of this Moose game tonight as well. And who knows, maybe even something on the MJHL Championship, which will be decided tonight out in Steinbach. Folks, thanks for being with us. Have a great evening. Enjoy the playoff action, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and tell a friend about WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.